And you are now live on YouTube.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the July 13th, 2022 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll. Thank you.
Councilmember
Good evening and
Safranek,
welcome to the July 13th, 2000. That's an echo.
sorry, yes, Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Blanca,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Fireworks.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, not this prolonged. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the preceding meeting?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd, 2022 meeting.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Wish I knew which mic was doing it.
Yeah.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 16-224, 2022. Whereas Matthew Vetromile has been missing since March 1st, 2021, when he was last seen in Orlando, Florida. And whereas Matthew's family wishes to bring attention to the missing persons case of their son, as well as to bring overall awareness to the plight of missing persons and their families. And whereas a vigil was held in honor of Matthew Vetromile on Saturday, June 11, 2022, the date of Matthew's 34th birthday. And whereas Matthew's family has donated a tree in his honor, which has been planted in Veterans Memorial Park, where Matthew played often while growing up. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks the Vetromile family for their generosity and in keeping Matthew in the forefront in the efforts to bring him home, as well as shining a spotlight on the tragedy of missing persons and the immense impacts those cases have on the missing person's family. Be it further resolved that the Henrietta Town Board pledges its support as well as its sympathy for the Vetromile family and all other families who are experiencing a similar situation with a missing loved one.
Second.
Obviously, I just can't imagine what the family must be going through. Very tough situation. And our hearts, thoughts and prayers go out. We have the resolution here. Again,
Amen.
words fail me. What else?
Just thoughts and prayers go out. I can't imagine how difficult it is. And, you know, if we can get everybody praying, hopefully you can find your son.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 16-225, 2022. Whereas George McVinney was hired as a crossing guard for the town of Henrietta on June 19th, 2011, after working 31 years for the Monroe County Department of Environmental Services. And whereas on August 16th, 2012, George stepped into the crossing guard director role where he has served for the past 10 years. And whereas in that time, he has dealt with a global pandemic, staffing shortages, reckless and impatient drivers, countless personnel issues, and through it all, he has done so with a steadfast commitment to the town and to the innumerable children whose lives he and his team has helped protect. And whereas George has recently hung up his reflective vest as crossing guard director at the end of this school season, having served under 3 town supervisors and 2 school superintendents. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board recognizes George McVinney for his 10+ years of service dedicated to the town as crossing guard director, and thanks him and his family for sharing his time with the town, and especially for his help in protecting our school children.
Second.
So again, thank you very much for the service. I know it's been very helpful for Linda and myself with regards to, we've never had to manage crossing guards before. So having someone who really knew how to do it and manage it all, and you're going to be hard to replace. Anyone else?
George, I thank you for your service to the school and keeping our children safe. There's nothing greater that anyone can do than keeping our children safe, especially the way people drive these days. Thank you so much.
Yes, and I, as a mom who's had 3 kids all walking to school, I just really appreciate your dedication to keeping our kids safe. And it is, I've seen the drivers out there. It is very scary, and just really appreciate your dedication to our kids in all kinds of weather.
Thank you.
Hearing no further discussions, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Do you want to present it to George?
Do you want? That way, yeah. Mm-hmm. There we go. Great. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 16-226/2022. Whereas Roland Osterwinter was hired by the town of Henrietta as an engineering assistant on May 28, 1991, and has held numerous positions within the town's engineering and planning department over 31 years, culminating in his most recent role as engineer. And whereas in that time, he has reviewed and inspected more than several hundred site plans, subdivisions, and job sites within the town, championed our stormwater and floodplain programs, filed thousands of easements at the Monroe County Clerk's Office, reviewed countless record drawings, served as a union representative, worked through a global pandemic, and has performed many other tasks that are too numerous to even mention. And whereas Roland will finally be putting down his slide rule and hanging up his reflective vest as a valued engineer in the engineering department, having served under 4 town supervisors and 3 directors of engineering and planning, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board recognizes Roland Osterwinter for his 31+ years of service dedicated to the town and more particularly to the engineering and planning department, and sends a special thanks to him and his family for sharing his time with the town.
Seconded.
Roland, it's been great working with you, and I know it's not coming to an end because Roland's going to help us out in, I guess you can call it semi-retirement. He's going to work part-time to help us out, especially to train his, I don't know if you can call it a replacement, but the person who's going to be doing some of his tasks, because nobody knows the easements and some of the historical stuff like Roland. When I was looking into the Riverton planned unit development, he provided information that most people probably thought was long lost. He's been a great resource. So again, thank you for all you done for the town.
Roland, all my years on the planning board and on the town board, I just wanted you to know that I consider you one of the most intelligent members of our team that I've ever seen. But more important than that, totally dedicated to the town of Henrietta to make it a better place to live and raise our children. Thank you.
Hearing nothing further, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for your years of service.
So our first special use permit is special use permit application number 2022-028 and 029. Town Place Suites by Marriott, Kenneth Drive, to allow for the development of a 4-story extended stay hotel, 2022-028, with a building height of plus or minus 52 feet, 2022-029. Could you please introduce yourself, say your name and your affiliation with the project, and give us some details about what you're looking to do.
Awesome. All right, good evening. My name is Rebecca Spur. I'm with BME Associates. We're the civil site engineers for the applicant, Indus Development Company LLC. Also with me tonight is Mr. John Ott with Indus to help answer any questions. So yeah, as you said, we are here requesting 2 special use permits for the development of a new 4-story extended stay hotel by Marriott, approximately 89 rooms. The project would be along Kenneth Drive within the Calkins Road Professional Business Park, just north of the newly built Taco Bell along Kenneth Drive in Lehigh Station. The first special use permit will be to allow the hotel use within the industrial district, which this parcel is within. The hotel use is not listed as a prohibited use in the code, and the other special use permit would be to allow a building height of greater than 40 feet. The height we're proposing for this hotel at its highest point is around 52 feet. With our application materials, we did provide responses, detailed responses to the 9 factors that the board considers with these applications. But just to kind of highlight a few, we do believe that this hotel within the district and area of the town would be a positive addition in an infill project to an already developed area, with the surrounding uses being commercial, quick service restaurants, gas stations, office uses, and industrial. The hotel would also be a great addition to the community with its close proximity to the east, to I-390, as well as the New York State Thruway to the south. It's not adjacent to any residential communities, and it's currently a vacant parcel, overgrown brush. The hotel use would be consistent with the character and the development in the neighborhood, and not act as any danger to the public, but rather enhance it. Indus has done their research, and the extended stay aspect of this hotel is in high demand for the area. The site plan will also provide amenities on site for guests, fitness center, and an outdoor activity area, as well as ample sidewalks, as well as connecting the sidewalks to the existing networks. Within the town, there are also other hotels that are greater than 40 feet within the industrial district as well, such as the Hampton Inn, Home 2 Suites, and I believe a DoubleTree along Jefferson Road. RIT and Conference Center is greater than that height as well. Along in the RIT campus and the new URMC campus, there's also buildings that are greater than the 52 foot in height that we are proposing. So we believe the town has the capabilities to provide the emergency response needed for that type of building and the height. We do understand the board has declared its intent to be lead agent for this action. We provided our long form EAF. We understand the part 2 and 3 have been prepared, and we do believe the development would have no impact to the environment, and that negative declaration could be issued tonight. If all goes well, the applicant is looking to proceed right into final design. We would prepare that application for the planning board and continue with that review. The concept plan that was provided has been laid out so that no variances from the ZBA would be needed. So with that, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Just curious if there's been any discussions with Paychex with their headquarters right there, whether, visiting executives, whether that might be a perfect location for visiting executives to come and stay,
Would you like to answer?
or other businesses there for that matter.
Sure. Our sales team.
Could you
normally
introduce
reach-
yourself? Sorry.
I'm sorry,
for the
John
minutes.
Ott from Indus, the Director of Construction. Our sales team we do work with Paychex already with our Penfield Hotel. So we already have cultivated that relationship, and I'm quite sure this would be just adding on to that relationship. Yes, sir.
Just from my experience of planning board, did you see the comment regarding the parking spaces before you? Go ahead.
Yes, I believe, I think what I have in front here does have 1 per room plus 1 per 2 employees. So I do believe we need 94 on site, so we'll provide that, maybe 95. So
Thank you.
we do have the space, yeah.
Thank you.
Is the hotel going to have a restaurant or anything like
It'll
that?
serve continental breakfast. It will not have a service restaurant.
And the blue area in the drawing, is that a retention pond?
Stormwater.
Stormwater?
management, Yes, yeah. So that'll include the green infrastructure too. We just, for concept purposes,
Sure.
color it all blue.
Is there a plan to put a pool or anything like that in here?
I don't believe the plan is for a pool.
To me, it seems like a good location. As you noted, it's away from residences. It's in the middle of a business park. In terms of certainly, it's not going to impose on anybody's sightlines. Methodist Hill, it's going to dwarf it, right? So to me, this one seems pretty cut and dry. But any other discussion? So on this one, we do have, if we're ready to act tonight, we do have both the seeker determination resolution written and the approval. Any other questions, comments? Anything from the public? Okay, hold on. Don't speak from, could you guys move aside so you can come up to the mic? Thanks.
Is there going to be any tax increase at all regarding anything that's connected with a private enterprise that's going to be doing this construction? Or would there be any, let's say, impact on any type of, let's say, taxes or anything that the town would have to recoup, or anything that the town would be contributing to this project in the way of financial or with the budget director or so forth.
None whatsoever.
That's all I wanted
Any,
to know.
any charges incurred in time expense get actually billed to the projects.
So
So
this is strictly a private venture, is that correct?
all private.
Okay.
Any other questions from the public? Anything online? Then hearing none, I am going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-028 and 029, Town Place Suites by Marriott.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-227, 2022 to issue a negative declaration for the Town Place Suites by Marriott.
Seconded.
Any discussion beyond what was already had? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-228, 2022 to approve special use permit numbers 2022-028/029 to allow the development of a 4-story extended stay hotel with an increased maximum building height.
Second. Any discussion beyond what was already had? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations, and we look forward to the plans and getting started. Thank you.
Yep.
Next up, we have public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-030, 95 Nutrition LLC, 100 Marketplace Drive, Suite 380, to operate a retail store selling healthy, pre-proportioned frozen meals, dietary supplements, and protein shakes with takeout meal service. Do we have a representative present or online?
Online. My name's Carmelo Cruz. I'm a co-owner of 95 Nutrition.
Could you please tell us a little bit about your project?
We were informed we needed a special use permit for the specifically the plumbing that was involved, alerted the town to our making protein shakes on site. And that's what was requiring the special use permit. We do prepare protein shakes at our stores. We're based in Buffalo, New York. We have 9 locations in Buffalo. We have 1 location in the Rochester area in Victor. We have the location in Henrietta, and we're looking to have 3 more locations in Rochester as well. We sell, as you mentioned, pre-portioned, healthy prepared meals that are frozen in store, as well as supplements, and protein shakes are a smaller component of our business. I would say roughly, 3%, 3 to 5% of sales. They're, we're not like a smoothie place. It's not our main function of business, but we're governed by U.S. or state ag and markets, not by the county health department. So we also have a 20C through them that has to be approved
Gotcha.
upon inspection.
Do you have any sit down, like if someone orders one of these, can they eat it on premises or is it purely for takeout?
Everything is takeout. There'll be no indoors or outdoor seating.
Okay, great. I don't have a whole lot of other questions, so as he mentioned, originally this was just the takeout stuff, but then because he was serving stuff on premises under zoning, it technically falls under a restaurant, which is why he came back in for a special use permit, so.
Is all the food made off-site and just brought into site, made and prepared and ready to sell?
Yes, all the meals are prepared in our industrial kitchen in Amherst, New York, and then transported to the retail locations for sale.
The protein shakes, are they also prepared in Amherst, or do you prepare those on site?
Those are prepared on site.
Okay,
That's the reason, again, because of that prep and sale, it technically falls under the restaurant category.
yeah, but they're just
Right.
shakes. Mhm. Okay.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Anyone else?
No.
Any questions from the public? Anyone online? Then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-030 95 Nutrition LLC, 100 Marketplace Drive. Does anyone wish to put forth a resolution to approve?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the special use permit application number 2022-030 95 Nutrition LLC, located at 100 Marketplace Drive in Suite 380 to operate a retail store selling healthy pre-portioned frozen meals, dietary supplements, and protein shakes with takeout meal service.
I'll second.
Second. Oh, did you second?
I
I'm
did.
sorry.
No problem.
I was like, I thought you said, do we have a
Third.
second? I'll be your backup second.
There you go. Any further discussion? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. So are you already operating or just getting close to operating?
No, we're waiting for construction.
Oh, okay.
We,
Oh, the building
Henderson
permit
Development.
that, gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
thank you very much.
Do you have an anticipated completion date or opening date or not? yet?
We're looking October 1st. It's going to depend on when our coolers arrive, which,
Yeah.
you know, with the supply chain issues right now.
I understand.
Yeah.
We have trucks on order from last year. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations and good luck, and we look forward to the opening. If you would like to do anything from a ribbon cutting standpoint, the Chamber of Commerce is happy to help. You can contact me at supervisor@henrietta.org, and I'll put you in touch with the chamber, and they will provide the ribbon, scissors, and help get the word out for, if you want to do a ribbon cutting.
Okay, what was that email again? Supervisor@henrietta.org?
You got it.
Got it. Yeah, I would definitely like to do something like that. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks. Take care.
Yep, thank you. Bye.
Next up, we have public.
I'm sorry, the main meeting room is muted.
We're muted for some reason.
Okay. Oh, is this one pulled?
This was postponed.
Okay, well, actually, what I typically do with that is I still hold the public hearing in case somebody showed up to provide feedback because it was pulled at the last minute. So I have special use permit application number 2022-031032, Urban Air Adventure Park, 300 J. Scuddy Boulevard, to operate an indoor recreational facility with a cafe offering sit-down meal service and selling alcohol. This application was postponed by the applicant until August 24th, 2022. But as I stated, if anybody is here to provide feedback or would like to provide feedback on the application, you're welcome to provide it now, and we will include it. Otherwise, we're going to close the public hearing and reopen it on the 24th. Is there anybody who'd like to provide feedback? Anyone online? Okay, hearing no feedback, we will close the public hearing for Urban Air Adventure Park, 300 J. Scuddy Boulevard, and we will reopen it on August 24th, 2022. Next up, I have the public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-024, Rise Cannabis, 556 Jefferson Road, to operate a cannabis medical and retail dispensary. Do we have representatives from Rise Cannabis? So please introduce yourself and your relationship to the project and tell us a little about the project. Granted, most of us are familiar with it, but not everybody in the audience may be.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. My name is Francis Gorman. I'm an attorney with the Harris Beach Law Firm and we're counsel to the applicant, Fiorello Pharmaceuticals, Inc. Fiorello is a wholly owned subsidiary of Green Thumb Industries, which is headquartered in Chicago. We appear before you this evening requesting a special use permit to operate a cannabis medical and adult use dispensary at 556 Jefferson Road. Fiorello Pharmaceuticals is a registered organization with the Office of Cannabis Management and is authorized to dispense medical cannabis products and is currently operating a medical cannabis dispensary in Monroe County. Subject to approval from the Office of Cannabis Management, the applicant will move its medical dispensary to the subject property, 556 Jefferson Road. I'm here this evening with Anne Marie Zamba, Director of Municipal Compliance for the applicant in support of our special use permit. The property, 556 Jefferson Road, is in a commercial B1 district, and in that portion of the B1 district that permits adult use retail cannabis dispensaries, subject to the granting of a special use permit in accordance with local law number 7 of 2022. The property has zoning street frontage in compliance with local law number 7, and the location of the property is consistent with the character of those uses in the B1 zoning district. The proposal is to reuse an existing empty commercial building. The property previously operated as a restaurant is of suitable size, configuration, location, access, and parking that makes it ideal for this proposed use. There are no structural changes planned for the property as part of the application, and therefore this is a type 2 action under seeker. The applicant will use the property as a medical as well as an adult use cannabis retail dispensary. At this time, I will turn over the presentation to my client, Ms. Zamba, who will discuss the operation of the facility in greater detail, including the security and safeguards that will ensure the proper and legal operation of the property. Ms. Zamba?
I see you all have iPads. Would anybody prefer a printed copy of the materials?
Oh, I already brought it. I guess I already have it. I'm sorry.
I'll take one too. Thanks.
That was different.
I'm actually going to take one from you as well. Thank you.
I normally use electronic, but since you've printed out, might as well put it to use.
Good evening, everyone. Anne Marie Zamba, Director of Municipal Compliance for Green
Could
Thumb
you pull the mic
Industries.
closer to you for the minutes? There you go. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yep.
Founded in 2014 with 4,000 team members nationwide. What sets us apart is our people. We're a place where people come first, not only our own, but those that walk within our doors. At Green Thumb, we're on a mission to promote well-being through the power of cannabis. Our family of 6 CPG brands distributed in 15 states and our 77 retail locations is the best place to start that journey. The next slide, our Green Thumb footprint is large. The last slide references 77 dispensaries across 15 states. What does that mean? It means we're experienced. Specifically, we're experienced in transitioning medical markets to adult use markets. Most recently, in April of this year, we transitioned some of our New Jersey dispensaries into hybrid stores, creating and executing on plans to ensure continued patient access and product supply to support our existing medicinal customer base. Our team, again, our people, flew in from all across the country to make this switch happen. a methodical adult use rollout where we partnered with the communities in which we call home, provided for the best outcomes. The next slide represents Green Thumb's footprint in New York. Rise has been a fixture in Rochester and the New York market for the past 3 years. You'll note the yellow circle represents our new grow facility, which is coming online in Q1 of 2023. We also operate Rise Half Moon and Rise Manhattan as medicinal dispensaries, and we'll seek to convert those as well. The next slide is a view of 556 Jefferson Road. Located in a prime retail corridor, our experience with med to rec conversions tells us that this is the perfect location in which to site a hybrid facility. Our current facility in Rochester is only 2,100 square feet. It's hard to find and presents parking challenges to some of our patients with limited modalities. We're excited by the opportunity this location presents. With 5,600 square feet and 74 parking spaces, our patients will have increased accessibility, truly making this site a home run. Slides 6 and 7 exemplify, show our current versus proposed state. So 6 is the current interior of our medical dispensary in Rochester. 7 captures the proposed exterior changes to the building and signage. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, thank you. As well as shows an example of proposed interior finishes. We operate in green and white colors typically with some high-end millwork finishes. Our customers are greeted with brightly lit, well-decorated spaces that are inviting and conducive to a positive both educational and shopping experience. I'd also like to point out that the outside of the building is rather inconspicuous. This is not just because it's a building rendering, but because we don't operate with bright flashing signs or obnoxious signage. We're not here to cause a disturbance. Rather, this will appear as an appropriately marked cannabis business, adhering to the state of New York advertising guidelines. Slide 8 is an exterior parking flow exhibit. So the blue spaces immediately adjacent to the building will be denoted as patient parking. The red spaces not immediately adjacent to the building will be for adult use customer parking. The yellow spaces will be marked and numbered for curbside pickup. Curbside orders must be placed online via our website in advance. The orders are picked and packaged prior to the customer receiving a text or email notification that it's now an appropriate time to arrive to the facility. Upon arrival, the customer notes within our online system that they have arrived and what parking space they are in, just like I do for my groceries. One of our team members walks out to the vehicle to confirm the order placed is correct, validate identification, and take payment into the facility. Any change due in product is then handed to the customer or patient in their vehicle, and the transaction is complete. 9 and 10 depict customer queuing. Adult use customers will queue along the exterior of the facility, while patients will receive priority access to the interior of the facility. Patient access remains paramount as we make these conversions. Page 10 is busy, admittedly. To take a step back, you can see 3 point of sale systems, or POSs as we call them, dedicated to medical orders, and 6 POS stations dedicated to adult use customers. The interior queuing and customer flow, as shown in blue, shows an expedited path for medical patients. The next page depicts our security overlay. The facility will have a total of 52 interior and exterior cameras, more than a bank. All of these exhibits come to life with the help of our people. Our smooth dispensary operations, as shown on the next slide, all hinge on that people first mentality. We have 17 dedicated, knowledgeable team members. 13 members are on daily from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. in varying shifts, and we anticipate the additional need of 15 team members as a hybrid facility. Our hours of operation are presently Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., Sunday closed. We typically see peak store hours at 9 to 10 a.m. at opening, again at noon, and then again 5 to 6 p.m. These peak hours are impacted by transaction times, and this comes down to a new versus existing customer. A new customer transaction time will take slightly longer, averaging roughly 20 minutes, which allows a pharmacist to consult either in person or over the phone and dispense the order. An existing customer typically places a pre-order online. Their order is packaged up before they arrive at the facility, and then they are alerted via text or email that it's the appropriate time to arrive. The next slide depicts our security and safety, which is at the heart of what we do. Yes, we card hard, but we also have specific cannabis technology that assists us here. ID ScanNet software instantly verifies the validity of the government ID presented while also simultaneously verifying age, effectively barring those under the age of 21 from entering our facilities. Our operation is, as you know, required to have 24/7 camera coverage. Every inch of the facility is under constant surveillance. Smile when you come down. State police and state regulators are granted full access to our cameras. Our cannabis products are securely stored in what's called a restricted access area or a vault, entry to which is only accessible by authorized employees with the correct badges and key fobs. Additionally, the state requires seed to sale tracking and that all products we sell be tested by third-party state certified labs. The next slide shows that entry to our facility is through a controlled process. ID must be validated before leaving what's known as a public space and entering the limited access area, or what you would know as a retail sales floor. As noted, our team members monitor for suspicious activity, public consumption, and loitering. We have a zero tolerance policy for on-site consumption, which is consistent with the state of New York regulations. We utilize a carbon filtration system to eliminate any odor transfer from product. Odor is rarely, if ever, an issue, as no live plants are located within the dispensary. Furthermore, our child-proof, tamper-proof packaging serves to eliminate any odor transfer if present. Our packaging is labeled with testing information from the state certified lab, safety warnings, barcodes for traceability, and inventory management. The next slide depicts patient testimonials and reviews. On the top right, we have a review from a patient that has been with us for 3 years. The top left calls out our head pharmacist, Kelly, by name. The theme across all of these reviews is our team takes the time to educate folks. I'm tremendously proud of that. It goes back to the people first mentality that we have. The last slide exhibits the charitable donations we have made and will continue to make to organizations within the community. I appreciate you sticking with me throughout this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to say, I'm really impressed with the thoroughness because I had listed out quite a number of questions, and I think you addressed a lot of the questions during the course of your presentation. So I have to really appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One is more for my information, but can you explain to me the significant number of kiosks that are there and what takes place there at the kiosk?
Sure. So the kiosk is an ordering platform. Different consumers have different preferences in which they want to interact with the menu. So you will be greeted when you walk in by a team member, a people care specialist, and you can choose to interact with them and build an order cart via like an iPad that they're holding.
Okay.
Or if that's not the preference, you can use a kiosk.
Okay. And during our public hearings, a pretty good number of people came to us saying that they need cannabis products for their children. Some of them have medical issues, but they wouldn't be allowed to come into the building, would they? The children that need the.
Those were adult children, just to clarify.
Adult children?
Yes,
Yes.
they were referring to adult children.
With special needs, so it
Special
was,
needs.
yeah,
Yes,
some.
they were children that were over 21. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted to clarify.
And also, the guard that you say that'll be on duty all the time, is he or she armed?
No, we do not believe that armed guards make for a conducive shopping experience, nor is it how we like to operate.
Okay, thank you. It was just information.
So will children be allowed to come in with their parents?
No, ma'am.
So there is an age limit to even walk in the door, period.
Correct.
Okay, and then the on-site, the pickup, if I recall correctly from the last time you were here, if you're going to pick something up and wait outside for it, that's just for medical marijuana. For any adult marijuana, they actually have to come in to the facility.
That's correct. So
Okay.
we have a reservation system. If an adult use customer presents with limited modalities, we would certainly accommodate that. But initially, we would keep it for medical patients.
Okay, that's what I thought you had said. And one more question. I know that when the adult use comes out, it's going to be, you have to be licensed for that. Not everybody's going to get that. What will happen if you don't receive a license? Are you going to stay here as a medical facility? Or are you not going to stay as a medical facility?
Sure. So as a current medical operator, we're not subject to the lottery process.
Okay.
Our conversion to include adult use is a payment of a fee and meeting the specific regulations. So a regulator will come down, inspect, ensure that we are operating compliantly, and then we are given a green light.
Okay,
Interesting. Okay.
interesting. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure.
You mentioned pharmacists. Are these actual pharmacists that you employ?
Yes, ma'am. From CVS, Walgreens, that's their background. They will continue to remain on staff as that is part of us having a medical dispensary.
Mhm.
They are also not limited to medical patients. So you, if you don't hold a registry card, may go in and say, hey, I'm on X, Y, and Z drugs right now, right?
Mhm.
Or prescriptions. And the pharmacist can tell you what a drug interaction would look like with cannabis, maybe recommend a strain or a terpene profile that would fit the ailment that you're presenting with.
I see. How many pharmacists do you employ, just out of curiosity?
Currently, I believe we have 6 at this location. Yes.
And do you employ other pharmacy employees, such as like pharmacy technicians or anything along those lines?
Sure, it's not technically required. Other
Mhm.
states have ratios of pharmacy techs to pharmacists. New York does not.
Okay.
So we have just regular team members that are
Mhm.
well-trained.
I see. One of my big questions is with regards to the parking lot flow. It appears that you have the vehicles coming in through the entrance that's right there on J. Scuddy Boulevard. And I guess it has always been my impression that that particular area was kind of more designed for an exit flow from the parking lot rather than an entrance. I'm just imagining a left-hand turn, which would be most typical to go into the parking lot in that particular location. That just seems like an awkward flow.
Admittedly, very awkward. And I didn't catch that. That's my mistake. So the ingress would be via the lane to the right. Egress would be via the lane, as you've pointed out, to the left. And then there is also on the top right corner, an in and out both ways. I believe it's directly in front of the McDonald's.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's just that in one, so typically the flow would be, people would be coming in off of Jefferson Road. And to make a left-hand turn into that one that's right there on J. Scuddy would be awkward.
Well, it's not just awkward, it's technically illegal, so.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's supposed to be a right turn in only. lane. So
Yes.
they typically, they go past and they take the road that's in between
Right.
this property and the McDonald's, and then they come in left. Although I will note, that is a double-headed arrow, that green one. The part that's wrong is
I see.
the curves off of that are in blue are going in the wrong direction.
Wrong
Yeah, they're
direction.
going in the wrong direction. That is right.
My apologies.
Yeah. I've
I
had
think that's grounds for denial, don't you?
concerns
Chris,
about
bad
that.
drawings, what do you think? It's a tough crowd, so. A couple of things I'll make note of. This use doesn't actually technically need a special use permit to be a medical cannabis dispensary.
Right.
A medical cannabis dispensary is considered a medical retail facility. And as this area, as B1 is allowed for any retail use, it would fall under there. The reason they're here for a special use permit is because they don't want to just move their medical here. They want to be a hybrid. And obviously then, but for the adult use retail, it does require a special use permit. Obviously, retail is allowed in a commercial B1, but cannabis is specifically called out for being only in a subset of B1 along Jefferson Road and parts of Jefferson Road and parts of West Henrietta Road. And it, one of the things that we talked about on that was its proximity to churches, playgrounds, as well as going beyond what's in the state laws, where we talked about businesses that predominantly cater to children. In terms of the distance to the Clubhouse Fun Center, it's less than the distance from which essentially we're, in other words, it's inside the ring where we're to look at that. One of the things as part of that, because of that location, and it fits with the business they're doing here, we had additional restrictions on the special use permit, which I'll read in a moment, but we addressed some of those because, again, we didn't want to have a facility that glorifies cannabis use, essentially creates that everybody must get stoned kind of mentality for those Dylan fans. With that said, it's outside the halfway point, which is again where we were looking at. So it is a bit further away, but as you saw their drawings and that type of stuff, because of that, there are restrictions on what signage can go up and that type of stuff. But again, you saw their plans. It fits well within that area or those restrictions. I'm just going through the reasoning we put together because been a busy month since we went through.
Yeah, I do appreciate the renderings too of the what the exterior would look like in the signage, just because with the Clubhouse Fun Center right there, and if this other special use permit that's been pushed off to next month potentially goes into the place in the back, there will be quite a few families coming and going
Right.
in that area.
Okay. And we have not received any feedback from any of the surrounding properties. No, again, the only feedback I've received has been people who are proponents. At our special or at the decision with regards to whether we were going to opt in or out of the cannabis laws, one of the, I'll call it major deciding factors, had to do with residents' access to medical cannabis. There were some, there was an individual with MS, there was an individual with PTSD, there was an individual with anxiety disorder and ADHD, and they all basically saw great benefits from it, but the difficulty of getting to the location was a problem. And so again, we think based on that, this is obviously going to really help because now they're right here in Henrietta. The other thing, they were very excited about the opt-in for the adult retail because typically retail prices are cheaper than medical prices. And so it will help those families who do have that need to be able to buy it. In addition, for instance, the mother of the child who has MS, on the bad days when she really, if she runs out and really needs something, right now it's the child who has to go in, it's the child who has the card. It makes it difficult with the retail establishment. The parent could go in and get it. So I'll let someone else talk while I pull up the special use permit, because whereas we don't read the whole resolution, I just want to read what the additional restrictions we have on, just to make sure there's no objection.
Yeah, if I
go ahead.
could, you answered this question very thoroughly in the presentation you did for us a couple of months ago. Given that this is still a cash transaction business, could you speak again, and I guess in a larger audience, to the idea of security for people that are in curbside situations that are going to be carrying potentially substantial amounts of cash?
Sure, very fair question. So for curbside, we will have somebody outside. It wouldn't just be one team member taking product and cash back and forth. That is sufficient for us at our other operations. The cameras are really what is the largest deterrent here. So those familiar with cannabis establishments understand that there is a room inside that is covered in cameras and somebody is just sitting watching them. That provides, a large enough deterrent. With cash pickups for initial adult use rollout, we do anticipate volume. I think that that's fair to say. And at that point, we would increase cash pickups so that there wasn't a large amount on site to nearly daily. We would have enough safes on site to house the cash. And then at that point, like as volume steadies, safes would be removed as they're not necessary.
Thank you.
Sure.
I will note that I did approach our Congressman Morelli about the decriminalization at the federal level so that it becomes a state decision. He informed me that that legislation is actually already passed the House. Unfortunately, it's stuck in the Senate. I'm not quite clear why it's stuck in the Senate, since the opposing party is the one who believes in states' rights. But there's also a second piece of legislation that if the decriminalization doesn't go through, this is also passed the House. It's to remove the banking restrictions for banks to be able to operate with cannabis retails in states where it's allowed, essentially is what it is. So there are two measures. So hopefully the largely cash transaction nature may go away in the not too distant future, but with Congress as it is today, who knows? So I just make a note of that, because like I said, I did reach out regarding, that's one of the negatives that shouldn't be there. Congress should fix that, but.
To springboard off of Councilmember Belanca's question too, is what sort of, have you had any increased calls for police or other emergency services or anything at your location on University Ave? What sort of requests for emergency assistance have you needed to have there?
Sure. We haven't had any requests.
Zero. Okay.
Correct. Actually, oftentimes the police will come to us because we have so many cameras and say, hey, can you provide footage? We're trying to investigate a local crime, and we are always happy to comply with those requests.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I know in your thing you say state police. I assume that also includes Monroe County Sheriff.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to run down the list of the conditions that are included in the resolution. The first few are pretty straightforward. Prior to operating the medical portion of the dispensary, the applicant obtain all necessary governmental approvals required to operate said medical cannabis dispensary, including a medical cannabis dispensary license from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. Number two, prior to operating the retail portion of the dispensary, same thing, you obtain all necessary government approvals. Three, all cannabis sale activities shall take place within the interior of the building, and we understand that's New York State, but just in case they ever relax that, we don't want that relaxed. No sales may occur outside, under tents, or under a portico or similar physical structure. It is noted that a pickup window or curbside delivery does not violate this restriction as long as all proper customer identification procedures are observed. Number four, the retail portion of the dispensary may only be operated in conjunction with the medical dispensary. Should the applicant desire to operate the retail portion independently, without the corresponding operation of the medical dispensary, that this special use permit would not permit that operation and a new approval would need to be obtained from the town of Henrietta. So if for some reason you ever decided to drop the medical, you'd have to come back. Due to the proximity of properties whose primary business is directed towards minor, the applicant must refrain from any external signage that glorifies or encourages the use of marijuana as determined by the town board or the director of building and fire prevention. It is specifically noted that in the opinion of the town board, the Rise Cannabis name and proposed signage does not glorify or encourage the use of marijuana. Number 6, that the operation continues its diligence with respect to childproof containers, packaging that does not entice children, buyer identification procedures, monitoring the facility inside and out, and other procedures and protocols to ensure the legal sale of cannabis products and to help prevent the cannabis products from falling into the hands of minors. The failure to maintain adequate safeguards or a material departure from what was presented to the town board during the application process could result in the revocation of the special use permit by the town board. So again, we love what you're doing. We just want to make it clear if you guys, and to be honest, it's not necessarily you. It's a question of sometimes what happens is the business gets sold and the other party that comes in isn't as responsible. And if that's the case, if they're not following the same procedures that you guys put forth or something that similarly safeguards the public, we would have the authority to revoke the special use permit. If that was ever to happen, you would receive sufficient notice. You'd have a chance to appeal the whole, before it actually shuts down. So with that said, if there were really egregious stuff, it might be essentially you might be shut down first and then appeal, but that would have to be, pretty egregious. So any other comments, questions from the town board before we open it up to the public? Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the public? Come on up.
I'm not sure, but is it? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Hirsch. I'm not sure, but isn't it true that cannabis is not marijuana? My understanding from what I gather is that it is an extract that doesn't have the THC in it. So I'm a little confused.
No, you're thinking of the CBD.
Yeah.
Is the extract without the THC.
So
cannabis is the general category of the whole thing, but what most people think of marijuana is the cannabis that has a THC. CBD does not.
So does this particular cannabis from what they want to dispense have the THC? Yes,
It does.
It does. So we're talking about a dispensary that is, I understand it's going to be inside, but still, from my perspective, Jefferson Road is a pretty busy, hot, 2-lane highway, whatever you want to call it. You've got malls there, you've got other things there. I don't know if that's really a very good idea.
Why is that?
Well, it is a drug. We understand that New York State obviously passed resolutions and laws that now permit it. People cannot be arrested now, provided they're not carrying above a certain amount. I believe, I'm not sure if it's an ounce, a half an ounce.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Point is that it is a drug. It is a narcotic. And if you're going to be dispensing this, even if it's inside a building, who's going to have oversight to make sure that it's not dispensed outside, or that who is going to be watching to see to it that this doesn't happen, or that it does not become, let's say, a problem. If you're not going to have a sheriff there or someone there, at least that is going to be responsible, that's going to answer for that. I understand the idea about not having an armed guard. That I understand. With guns today, we get that. But the point is, who is going to have oversight? That is the big thing. My big thing always is oversight.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Who provides that for the liquor stores?
Yeah, but liquor, all right, yeah, that's true. But liquor is a different category. It's not the same thing. Liquor, basically, anything that is abused, of course, in excess can be dangerous. You may not remember, but not too long ago, a kid at RIT was killed with water torture. You drink too much water, you can die from that. It can happen. Anything in any amount that is excessive is no good. But the difference between liquor and this is that liquor is not going to get you there as fast. It might take longer. People smoke for 30 years and they don't get cancer until they're 60. You do something like marijuana or any other type of drug, the effects are certainly going to be a lot quicker, a lot faster, and a lot sooner. That's the difference.
Right, which is why the town opted out of the consumption sites where you can actually consume the product on site and potentially drive home, and only opted in for the retail dispensaries where they cannot consume on site. So presumably they take it home and they consume there. If we didn't allow this, just to be clear, somebody could drive just not even a mile north into Brighton, buy it there, and come back into town. So there is nothing in the law that would allow the town to say cannabis isn't allowed, even if we wanted to. I'm not saying I don't believe we should go that route, but we had the choice as to whether to allow the dispensaries or not. As far as who provides the oversight, the Office of Cannabis Management, the Monroe County Sheriffs, the New York State Police. And in fact, we had a CBD oil company we'd heard rumors that they were selling marijuana illegally. I called the sheriffs. They actually sent, smartly by them, they sent a 20-year-old sheriff deputy in undercover, purchased. We are now pursuing charges against that company. I can tell you I don't know where the DA's office is. They've not been prosecuting much in the way of marijuana crimes.
Because of the new law, probably.
They're not prosecuting possessions. We pointed out this is different. This isn't a possession issue. This is a store illegally selling marijuana and illegally selling it to minors. And so I brought the DA, Sandra Dorley, into the Monroe County Supervisors Association meeting where pretty much every supervisor said the same thing. You have to prosecute these people. We cannot allow the illegal sale, and especially the illegal sale to minors. So believe me, we take this very seriously. We've had a lot of discussion on this. The actual decision to opt in was last year. And we set up some additional rules surrounding where they can go and the type of oversight. And as I said, we specifically decided to not opt in on the consumption sites because whereas with alcohol, people have more experience with it. That doesn't mean people don't abuse it. They do.
We know
There have been
that.
far more accidents and deaths caused by drunk drivers than stoned drivers, far and away. But most people the responsible people have an understanding of their tolerances. Generally, they know how much they can drink or not drink. Bartenders have an ability to spot people who are drunk and cut them off. Again, not all bars do, but most responsible bars do. There are tests, breathalyzer test and blood alcohol tests that can determine whether somebody is above the legal limit. None of those things exist today in the cannabis world, which is why we think that the on-site consumption is a dangerous proposition until those things develop. One of the things we noted is that today's cannabis is not the same cannabis from when I was going to college, right? It's stronger.
A lot stronger.
Right. So we understand that. So we basically, again, that's why we opted out of the.
If I may also point out, this is a medical dispensary, and until such time as adult sales are approved, this will continue to operate as a medical dispensary with oversight from pharmacists and from other medical providers.
Well, I think the main concern here is direct oversight when it happens on site there. So you can call the sheriff, true.
There is no on-site consumption.
Right. Oh, there
It's-
isn't.
This is through prescription.
Oh, so in other words-
They run the risk of losing their license to
Okay.
operate if someone is caught with it. So that's a huge, when you think about the potential profit available to these businesses, I just can't see someone, especially a company of this magnitude, running that risk. This is one of the things that hopefully the Office of Cannabis Management is going to pay close attention to when they decide to issue the license, because again, we've seen that CBD store is a perfect example that they flaunt the law. They were giving away marijuana with the purchase of an I don't remember what it was, a $90 t-shirt. Well, okay, they weren't giving away marijuana. They were selling marijuana illegally.
I'm not
Right.
saying that these people are going to do it, but I don't,
Right.
do you really think that a location in a mall like that, you
It's not in
know?
a mall. It's in a standalone. It's the former IHOP.
Oh, okay. That's not over by where Longhorn is, or is this over by where what is it called? Where
BJ's,
yeah, BJ's. Is
So
that-
it's
but it's
across,
still considerably away from.
right.
BJ's.
It's a standalone building. It's opposite Wendy's. So it's to the west of Wendy's, to the south of McDonald's, to the north of the mall.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2022-024, Rise Cannabis, 556 Jefferson Road. Fellow board members, I have resolution 16-229, 2022 to approve the special use permit for a Rise Cannabis medical and retail cannabis dispensary.
Second,
So again, I already read all the specific conditions that are placed on this. You know, we included in with this is also we went through all the special use permit. Both the regular special use permit considerations, as well as the ones that we added when we opted into cannabis. We added some additional things to pay attention to. And again, one of those was specifically when there's a proximity to a businesses that see a lot of children, that I don't know that the state's going to allow you know, again, to use a Bob Dylan tune, everybody must get stoned type of advertising. But clearly in this location, if they someday decide to allow that, this location would not allow that because of its proximity. So any further discussion? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations. Do you have a schedule? I know you still got some more approval in terms of planning board site plan. I suspect you have to site plan final, but
Sure, so we will submit.
could you come up to the mic so it's
Sorry about
recorded?
that.
No problem.
Yes, we will be submitting site plan construction documents. We also are waiting for our relocation request to be approved from the OCM. We've received some comments. They are very kind of light comments. They wanted to just know who our security vendor was. So we anticipate that approval shortly. We'll be back before the planning board.
Great.
Okay.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, we have a public hearing. Thank you.
Welcome.
Finally, we have a public hearing for proposed local law to establish chapter 121 of the Henrietta Town Code to regulate fires and open burning. So I will note that very little of this chapter is new law. It's all existing law. The problem is it's hard for residents to find it because some of it is in New York State fire codes, and it's not where you might think it is. Open burning is under chemical. It's under, or maybe that's what it's under in the section in DEC, I forget. But you basically, there are three major portions governing the rules on open burning in New York State. So again, there's New York State fire codes, there's New York State environmental conservation codes, and then there are Monroe County health codes. So what I tried to do with this is pull them all into one place. This helps residents understand what they can and can't do. And if they want to have an open fire, you know, where they need to locate it within their yards and away from combustible materials, and, you know, have a hose ready to extinguish it. If it's a campfire, for instance, things like that. The only portion that we've added, we've had some problems with neighbors burning round the clock. And so we added a restriction that campfires can only be, I think it's twice a week for campfires and it's once a week for bonfire. The difference between a campfire and a bonfire, plain and simple, is the amount of fuel in the fire. And that's again defined by New York State code. It's not a prohibition. Someone can operate their grill every night. It doesn't, that restriction doesn't apply to grills. It doesn't apply to if you have a chimenea or one of the little, fire pits. But it's specifically about the burning of material in an open burn. So someone asked, I've received a couple comments. Someone said, is it, why is it only limited to 2 a week? To be perfectly blunt, we're only ever going to get notified that it's happening if you're really upsetting your neighbors, right? So someone said, well, what if I've got kids over and they want to camp out 3 nights in a row over the weekend? It's not going to be a big deal. We're probably never going to hear about it. If it's some plan, one of the things we have is either unless it's for a campground. So for instance, Camp Possibilities has a campground, they can exceed that count. Or if there's an event like a camp out cookout. So if someone's very concerned about it and they're going to have friends come over and they're going to camp out for 3 days at their property, they can come to the town and notify us. The reason it's such a low number is for us to violate somebody on that. So if it's limit is 2, we would have to visit and spot 3 campfires within 1 week. It's not going to be the easiest, but again, its primary purpose is to catch these individuals who there's one individual in one neighborhood where I've gotten complaints from about 6 different residents, 6 different neighbors. So that's essentially what that clause is in there for. So with that said, I'll open it up. Anybody have any questions for starting with the board? Any questions, comments? So I know we've been over this before. Any questions or comments from the public?
Just 2.
Well, actually, so go ahead, Mike.
Evening Supervisor and town board members. Mike Stafford, one of the commissioners for the Henrietta Fire District. I'm here in that regard tonight. First, I'd like to say the district is much in favor of the most of these changes in here, including the DEC and the Mineral County Health Department rules included in it. There was one concern or 2 concerns, one that supervisor already addressed, the frequency limits, how that's really going to be enforced. And he explained it. It's not going to be the easiest, but I understand why it's there. The other part is the enforcement itself under 121-7 enforcement. Last night at our meeting, it was discussed at the fire district meeting, it was discussed that on E, the Henrietta Fire District Chief or the designated representative would enforce that. The chief has no authority to enforce this, so that should be removed.
Yeah, so the attorney did contact our attorney. The reason that's there, for us to enforce something, we have to put eyes on it. So it either has to be a code enforcement officer or a law enforcement officer or a designated representative from one of those organizations. We had originally wanted to include the fire district because that way, if, let's say, the fire district found it one night, told our code enforcement goes back the next night, it's still burning, there's 2 nights. If we don't have that, the Henrietta Fire District can be one of those sets of eyes that makes it tougher for us. I did have an email exchange with Chief Cholak. He explained where he's coming from. Whereas I'd prefer that it be there. The fire district's made it pretty clear they want it removed. But like I said, that's why it was in there in the first place. We weren't trying to give him additional authority. We were trying to mark that they could be considered authoritative eyes on the potential violation.
Okay. I think one of their concerns was when it comes to the authority to do anything about it. You
Yeah,
know, the
that would be
punishment
us.
part.
We would be
So-
the ones who would
but that
issue
was-
the notice of violation. Well, us or the sheriff. So if it were a egregiously dangerous burn, I suspect the sheriffs would intervene and ticket or arrest the individuals immediately.
Okay, so I was just asked last night
Sure.
to express.
Nope,
concern.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, like I said, that was my purpose. Feel free to bring that back to the commissioners,
Okay.
but
So-
John has, based off of the feedback from the attorney, from the commissioners, he's already amended the resolution. Because it's such a minor change, we don't believe it necessitates an additional public hearing.
Right.
So we can still vote on it tonight.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Hirsch,
Yeah, I just have.
please wait till you're up at the microphone.
Yes, I just have you can hear me. I just have two questions. Does this apply to fireworks, considering that it is legal now? It wasn't legal at one point, then New York State said, okay, we're going to make it legal now again. Now fireworks are legal. So when you talk about an open burn, you know, fireworks are being lit. You have gunpowder, explosive material in those fireworks. Some are more dangerous than others. So does this apply to the lighting of fireworks, considering that you've got open sparks, open flames? Or is this just limited to bonfires and, let's say, campfires?
So again, this is just a collection of the laws that apply specifically to flames, open burning. And it's not open flames, it's specifically open burning. There's a definition of that in the town code. Whether we pass this or not, these laws all still apply. This is just a means to consolidate it, to locate it. We have not done anything with respect to fireworks. Those, again, are all state laws. We don't have anything specific.
But
I suspect there may also be county regarding that, but again, we're not looking to change the rules with the sole exception of the frequency. So the laws, the state laws on fireworks are still present. No change.
But my only question was, since you're lighting a firework which has an open flame, that would be an open burn technically. I mean,
Not under.
okay, so
Not
that
under the
doesn't.
definition of
Right.
New York State.
And the other question is, when you say you issue a violation, just from my own understanding, because there are all kinds of things that someone can do that could get a violation. What exactly does that mean? Do you have a nuisance point system that's assessed to a property? Or do you issue fines? Exactly what is it that
So it depends on the section of code that's being violated. Typically, if it's something like a property code violation, they're given a time to correct. If they correct within a certain amount of time, done.
it goes away?
If they don't correct, then typically what happens is then it goes to the fine level. At that point, in which case they can either, it's similar to like a parking ticket.
Right.
You can pay it immediately or you can go to court. One of the things we are looking to change, for whatever reason, a bunch of our minor infractions include the possibility of jail time.
Oh,
It's
really?
ridiculous. But
Well, is that you or is that?
that's the town code. It's been like that for a long time. That is something we want to fix. But in this particular one, again, the penalties are set out by the state. So it would just be those particular penalties.
Okay.
Part of the problem was residents don't know what they can and can't do because it's hard to find. And the sheriffs, even when they then have to cite someone, don't know what sections of code, because for a ticket to stand up in court, you have to reference the proper section. So this makes it easier for them to address it, but it also, more importantly, lets our residents know what are the rules, because a lot of people, don't understand when I can and can't have. They don't understand that there are periods where there are no burn days. I have to be a certain distance from a structure. The amount, the size, the distance depends on the type of burn, how big it is, the amount of fuel. So it brings all of that into one location to make it easier for our residents to understand the rules.
I assume that this also applies to things like noise disturbance, any type of.
Well, not this particular
Not
chapter,
this
but
particular,
yes,
I understand, but I'm saying in
Correct.
general, people move in and they think they can just do whatever.
correct,
And they don't understand that there are rules.
correct.
And the same rules apply. You can't park in front of a fire hydrant. You can't make noise beyond a certain hour. I mean, motorcycles, these mini dirt bikes have been a huge issue. The state now has, and county has a law now that says that if you caught without on the open road, they're impounded. The fines are pretty stiff to get them back. You
Right.
know, I mean, but I understand.
So each of those, like each of the sections specifically spell out what the penalties are for the violations. And typically what happens is first offense, it's low and it escalates.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments coming up? Again, please introduce yourself.
My name is James Gilbert. I've been corresponding with many of you. We are one of the neighbors that immediately adjacent to the problem site. I had a couple mainly technical questions. In the law, it refers to attended, that the fire must be attended. What exactly does that mean?
That's a New York State rule. So basically it just means you can't walk away while the thing is still burning. Someone is supposed to be there. Now, someone asked, what if I have to run in and run back out? Well, first off, the chance that someone's going to spot it that way, not a big deal. What it really gets down to is some people start these bonfires, they let it burn down to embers, and then they leave it burning overnight. Well, should a tree or something blow onto that, it's going to flare up. That's what they don't want. You're basically, when you're no longer going to be present, you're supposed to extinguish it. So if someone starts a bonfire and goes inside and leaves it burning for some time, that is a violation. And if you were to spot that, you can absolutely call 911 because it is a dangerous situation.
Is there an age limit on who must attend? The attendant?
I don't know that New York State addresses that, but I'm sure it has to be a responsible individual. So my point is obviously use the extreme, a 2-year-old doesn't count. But as far as, does it have to be an adult? I don't know.
There's a lot of Boy Scouts that
Right.
run fires. That's.
Yeah, so that's defined by New York State. I don't know that rule.
The youngster who was often in attendance next door was not a Boy Scout.
Not a Boy Scout.
Okay. There are web links in the law. If those web links change, does it render that provision moot
It does not.
because of the actual reference to the law itself?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the web links are actually just for convenience. That's not part of the law itself. And Don, I don't know if there's some way to put that in there that makes it clear.
Well, the local law that's proposed references specific provisions
Right.
of other laws. And
My
then it
point-
links them.
yeah.
So
My
those
point
links
is,
go,
we'd be able to update the links whenever they change without having to do a new resolution. Is there some way to? I'd hate to have to do a public hearing to update the link.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
We don't have to fix that problem now, but think about that as to
Yeah.
how, it just seems to me if, again, from
Maybe
a
we could just put online link to fire code regulations and embed it. Instead of, because right now it spells it all out. See what I'm saying?
so you're just saying, right, that we make the text a hyperlink?
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
okay.
Oh, the words online link to fire code regulations. a
Right.
hyperlink?
Right.
That makes sense.
Yes.
And
So I'll
then
just-
whatever the link is, we can just update it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, what we can maybe put those in brackets, that's what's going to be the online link for those.
That
I just,
doesn't
like,
seem like a major change. I
it's
mean,
not, it's just that the issue is just, again, I want to be able to update it without, and specifically, obviously, this really only is a big deal for the online website, but I want to be able to update the hyperlinks without having to go through a public hearing and the whole 9 yards, so.
Exactly. And then finally, the law references permits. If someone wants to do more than what's in there, and you talked about somebody having a camp out or something, what's the procedure for getting a permit? Is that-
It's a residential permit. You just go to the building and fire department.
And what criteria do they use to determine whether you get a permit or not?
We haven't fully defined that, but basically we're gonna, we'll be updating our, in fact, we've got some updates for this one, but very soon we're going to update our whole permit schedule for, and we'll have that in there. But I will say it's not going to be that strenuous to get a permit to basically say, like I said, to use the example, I want 3. Now, if somebody wants to get one to burn every single night for the entire summer, that's another story.
Or
But-
3 weeks in a row.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's got to be reasonable. I mean, it's the same thing, like, so for instance, we had in a neighborhood, we had somebody who came in for a permit because they were having a religious observance. Now, the way they painted it, it wasn't this big thing. We were a little hesitant about it because it was a religious observance. We were cautious. We gave it to them. It was ridiculous impact on the neighborhood. So next year when they come back, we're going to say no. Because, but so it's basically, it's a question of what it really comes down to is what is the impact in the neighborhood if by providing that input.
Potentially
If they
public
don't
hearings.
agree with the decision, they can go to the zoning board of appeals. But otherwise, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's not, again, it's not hard spelled out. We have a policy, but you're never going to be able to spell out every single circumstance. But
I'm just concerned that the neighbor might say, oh, that's the case, then I'll just apply for a permit and get one.
right. So he would probably get one for the first weekend. And when he comes back to get one for the second weekend, we'd probably say, well, why, and certainly by the third weekend, they'd say, no, it's too
So-
frequent.
How would one get a permit for this? How would they apply for that?
The same way it's the special event permit thing we have for, again, residents do that today. So it's specifically, the special event would be some sort of camp over
It's
type of thing.
analogous to a special event permit, or it is.
It is, yeah, it is. There's, again, it's in the building code today.
Okay.
So the people who, again, had that religious observance where people were going to be coming over and they had to get one of those. They wanted to set up a tent. There's certain things that require you to get that permit, setting up a significant tent in, again, that structure's already there. We're going to have to just write up some policy specific to, for this particular thing. But like I said,
Okay.
Should we,
common sense should apply.
should we just specify then via special event permit so it's clear?
Let me make sure that's, and Jenny, if you're listening, or Kevin, if you're listening, if you know if that's the correct name of it. Otherwise, I'm going to try to get on to our town. I think that's what it's called, but I'm not 100% certain.
Mr. Supervisor, Kevin Wilson, Director of Building Fire Prevention. Yes, it would be a special event permit.
Thank you, Kevin.
So you want me to specify that?
That would be fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I understand we have somebody online who wishes to provide feedback.
Kevin, you're all set.
Thank you, Kevin Yost, 1474 Middle Road. And I doubt if anything's changed in the last 35 years since I was involved in Boy Scouts, but every scout function had required 2 adults present, and the scoutmaster said if a patrol wanted to have a camp out, then there had to be 1 adult present. And I don't know, it's been a long time. Of course, Cub Scouts, Tiger Cubs, Explorers, and Venture Crews are also subsidiaries of Boy Scouts. I imagine other youth scout fraternity sororities have similar rules. Girl Scouts, American Heritage Girls, and Campfire Boys and Girls, and Trails USA. I don't know. And I also I can't speak for the Legion or the VFW. I'm only an officer of the Sons of the American Legion Squadron. We don't meet in July or August. I don't know if Legions meets then or not in the summer anymore. If they are, they're probably meeting now, or they usually meet at 7 on the second Wednesdays of the month. However, they did burn flags with Boy Scouts. I think it was
Right.
November, and in past years they had to give their flags to the fire district to burn because as residents would complain about the fire and the smoke.
So Kevin, just to be clear, in the law, the ceremonial burning of flags and or religious rites are specifically excluded from the law under New York State. So, however, because of the potential noxious fumes, yes, they're supposed to do it in a location that will minimize the impact, which is why they typically do it out at station number 6 off of Erie Station Road.
Yes, I know they did it last November in the yard at dusk. And I think Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts were involved as well. And that was the first time I'd ever known them burning flags in several years because of complaints of nearby residents.
Right. I will say that if everybody who did open burns were as careful as the Boy Scouts, we wouldn't be here talking about adding chapter 121. So
I know a Boy Scout in Henrietta who grade 6 through 12 classmate. I guess he got kicked out for powering and going to trip in Brighton got same thing and myself and some other Boy Scouts would get yelled at for powering it at camp outs until we got our fireman kit.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Anyone else? Then hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing for the special use permit application. Oh, sorry, we're reading the wrong ones. I'm going to close the public hearing for the proposed local law to establish chapter 121 of the Henrietta Town Code to regulate fires and open burning. Don, do you think those changes are significant enough to necessitate we delay?
I think they're fairly minor, but actually, in having that discussion, just thinking out loud, just thinking through some of the things in here with respect to frequency. So right now, as it stands, the proposed law prohibits outdoor fires, including, quote, a fire which unreasonably and substantially interferes with the use or enjoyment of another's property, such as by way of excessive smoke, noxious odors, or toxic irritating fumes. So basically, nuisance fires aren't allowed. Fires that cause a nuisance. Then under frequency, you have fires that it says that fires that burn
just
for
before
more.
you go on, just to be clear, so that typically covers the ones where people are burning pressure treated wood, painted wood, materials, plastics, stuff that create noxious or toxic fumes. That's not, if they're burning clean wood, that doesn't fall into that category.
Things like people like to burn scented things like pine cones and that sort of thing.
Again, that's not typically going to be considered noxious. You start to get into
Opinion.
but you do start to get into opinion, and there's some people, again, the neighbors, it's not so much the scent of the wood. Well, in that case, this individual, I think, burns more than just wood. But even if they were only burning wood, it's not just that, it's that every single night, and not just night, it's like from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night, there's a fire going constantly. So again, the fume itself, it's the frequency and the consistency with which it's burning. That's a big issue. So that's why we added that specific frequency section.
Okay, yeah, I guess where I was going with that was if it's a nuisance fire, even if you're just burning hardwood that is not treated, and you have a ton of smoke blowing in someone's face over the property line, I would say
Right.
that's still substantially interfering with the use of another's property by way of
Correct.
excessive smoke, regardless of whether it's once a week or 5 times a week.
I would agree with that.
I do think this frequency thing is going to be very challenging to enforce
I
because
understand.
it's going to have to be with the nuisance fire, if someone's neighbor has a fire with a bunch of smoke blowing in my face, I call whoever, they come over and they can see it right then and there. In terms of frequency, that's
Right,
it's
so
something
basically, they're gonna have
document
to
and
make
prove.
multiple, they're gonna have
Yeah.
to make multiple visits, and I understand that, but again, if you don't have that in there, then there's nothing you can do about that case. You're gonna have a hard time, the law, the way the New York State law, when it talks about the nuisance fires, again, it's looking at exactly as you say. I can walk up to it, look at it and say, the massive amount of smoke, the noxious odors, the large flames, whatever it is. I mean, it's immediate and obvious typically that that's a nuisance fire. The nuisance here isn't the fire itself, it's that it's always burning.
Right.
And so the point is, we're not looking to, again, catch somebody who decides to have 3 campfires in the backyard. Our chances of catching them is minuscule. This is the chronic, constantly burning individual, that's the scenario that we're going to be, that hopefully that's going to catch. And again, if it stops a couple of them, it's better than not having it, in my opinion.
Do you think more than 6 hours in a week is overly limiting? And that, for example, if you maybe had a fire in your fire pit Friday night for 5 hours and then Saturday night for 5 hours, you're at 10 hours.
I thought that you're not looking at the bonfire one.
There's a bonfire one and a regular fire one. The regular fire says no more than 6 hours in a week or no more than 2 days in 1 week. And the bonfire says 4 hours in a week and no more than 1 day per week.
Right.
Well, I think in many ways that those are both both of those, in terms of the burning for 2 days and the 6 hours is overly restrictive. However, I think what we had discussed was that this is a tool, not a weapon. And that has been something that I think we've discussed on several different occasions, that there's that balancing act between those two things.
The problem is the larger you make that window, the harder it is to prove that they're outside that window. That's the challenge. Because as we've talked about, it's already getting there in terms of we receive multiple complaints. Now we have to go address it, right? And so to be honest, the hours had more to do with it being continuous at one point. It wasn't the sum, because again, how am I going to prove, okay, you did 3 hours yesterday and you did 3.5 hours today? No one's going to be able to prove that. The point is, if it started at 7 a.m. and it's still burning at 10 p.m., even so it's 1 day a week, that's ridiculously long. 6 hours in 1 day, just I have a hard time understanding why you would need to have a bonfire or a campfire going for more than 6 hours.
This says in 1 week.
I understand that. My point is the ability to add that up. It really has to do more than, with that in a day, but I guess we could make it 6 hours per day or 2 days per week. I don't know. Whatever.
I'm just opening up for discussion only because I see there's already a potential issue and I want to make sure that we're framing this in a way that doesn't invite problems on top of resolving problems.
Right.
I think one thing that perhaps I would like to see would be a relatively simple permit process specifically for.
So we do have that.
Is it itemized that fires like campfires?
Again, not currently, because
not
that's not one of the events, but
Right.
basically we would just add
A line on the
Yep.
form. And I think that would be one way that responsible neighbors
Right.
would be able to have a weekend with their family and enjoy their campfire without being excessive. As someone who lived next to a house that did have excessive fires, I can tell you that there was one summer when they would start their burn at 7 PM and it would go until 3 AM every single night. And that's the kind of thing that you want to try to be able to catch and to curb. And, you know, it got to the point where all of the neighbors were having to report and report and report. And I think that's the kind of issue that we want to have the power to address so that it, an entire neighborhood is not seriously impacted.
So Don, you know, the problem you get into is, so it doesn't need to be 6 hours in a week. The problem you have if you say 6 hours in a day, going back to Millie example there, that wasn't 6 hours in a day, right? It was 5 hours on Friday night and 3 hours on Saturday morning, as they're going to argue. Do you say it's contiguous? Well, then do they shut the fire down for 5 minutes and start it back up?
Yeah, but it also says no more than twice.
I understand that. So I'm just, you know, so like I said, I don't have a problem if we switch that from 6 hours to a day to 6 continuous hours or something along those lines. But that's what it's trying to avoid is, you know, like I said, that 7 PM to 3 AM burn.
Right now it says no more than 6 hours in 1 week
Right.
and no more than 2 days in 1 week.
Yeah. So again, the 1 week can be, if we want to change it to 6 hours in 6 continuous hours and then just say in no more than 2 times per week.
Without a permit.
Right,
you
without
don't
a
have-
permit.
Right. The permit basically says you're outside of that, right?
So you want to say no more than 6 hours in 1 day?
6 continuous hours.
6 continuous, I don't
Do
want
we
to say
care if
one
it's
day.
continuous?
Well, like I said, the problem you have is the example Millie just gave is not 6 hours in 1 day. I could burn for 10 hours from 7 PM to 5 AM and none of that is within 6 hours in 1 day.
Yeah, but then you burn your 2 days a week.
I understand, but that's too long. That 10 hours,
We also would still need to be able to have
I know,
person in authority to be able to witness
right?
Yeah.
the period of time. the
How about
time.
no more than 6 hours in 1 24-hour period?
That works.
That's fine.
Okay. Or during any portion of more than 2 days in 1 week. That's the other part we have in there. Okay. And then for the bonfire, change it the same way, basically?
Yep.
Okay.
And again, like, so for instance, now this is not Henrietta, but down at my brother's cottage, there's a guy across the street who is a bonfire expert, so to speak. Phenomenal bonfires. He works for a church that makes, or a company that makes church pews, so he has all kinds of great hardwood scraps. His bonfires burn clean. He doesn't burn that long. You know, it's just, it's a while, you know. His biggest one is typically on the Ring of Fire night. So knowing someone who loves to burn, that I look at this would not be restrictive.
Okay.
Any other discussion? So now let me go back to the question. Do you think that's significant enough to push it off?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we'll bring it back. So I guess we have to hold another or continue the public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So rather than closing the public hearing for the proposed local laws to establish chapter 121 of the Henrietta Town Code to regulate fires and open burning, we are going to close this session, but keep the public hearing open for the next meeting, which I believe is August 3rd.
It is.
Okay. Okay, that concludes our public hearings. Can I get my, I don't know what it is, 6th resolution, maybe?
Give me a minute.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 16-230, 2022 to authorize bills payable for June 24th, 2022 through today, July 13th, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion?
That was a lot of ayes.
Yeah. That is definitely a problem when you only have one town board meeting in the month.
But I'm glad to know that we're ordering a lot of books.
That's
And-
right. Yes. As we note many times, I really wish the book company would learn to put multiple books on a single invoice. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolster,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 15-2022. Whereas MVP Healthcare has donated $1,000 to the Town of Henrietta Senior Center in support of wellness programming for senior citizens. And whereas a check in the amount of $1,000 was received by the Recreation Director, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks MVP Healthcare for their generosity.
Seconded.
Discussion? Obviously, I think it's great what MVP's been doing. It's a great relationship that our senior center has forged with MVP Healthcare. They've been able to do a lot of really good wellness programming and allows them to try some new things that in a way that, again, makes it free or affordable for our seniors. So it's a great program, and kudos to the senior center staff and director, and again, to the MVP Healthcare individuals. Any questions, comments? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolster,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-232, 2022. Whereas Blaze Gymnastics 7785 Frontage Road, Suite D, Cicero, New York 13039 has donated a pre-owned chalk eater to the Town of Henrietta Recreational Gymnastic Program. And whereas according to gymnastics director, the chalk eater has an estimated value of $1,000. Therefore, be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Blaze Gymnastics for their generosity.
Seconded.
So for those who don't know, a chalk eater, it's essentially a giant air filter that you put near gymnastics equipment where the gymnasts use chalk so that it pulls the chalk into it, filters it out, and keeps it from landing all over the gym, hopefully. Any other questions, comments? I will say, if you haven't seen the town newsletter, the growth in the gymnastics program has been tremendous. Huge kudos to Jackie and her team, as well as the entire rec department and the support they give. The growth has been fantastic. They've had kids, in addition to the just pure enjoyment that so many of the kids get, they've also had a number of very talented individuals who have placed well in tournaments. And, you know, it's just a great program all around.
It's really a fantastic thing for us as a town to be able to offer an accessibility to a sport like gymnastics, which is often well outside the price range for many individuals. And I think I'm just really pleased with the town that we're able to offer such a high quality program.
Agreed. Any further comments? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolster,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-233, 2022 to authorize the negotiation of a contract for the sale of the cell tower located on the Department of Public Works grounds.
Second. So again, we went out to bid for for the sale or lease of the cell tower. The highest bid was a purchase price of $1 million at closing and a land lease of $1 per year. As I said, I'm going to try to negotiate the land lease up. So basically, the idea is that that's essentially the minimum amount. The contract can't be for less than amount, but hopefully we'll be able to get it for greater than that amount. And this cell tower is one that was originally built by, I believe it was by Sprint. Is that correct, Craig? He's nodding his head. And it had a particular lifespan on it when they, not the structural, but in terms of the way the agreement was built is essentially they built it for us and they had a contract governing it where they got the majority of the revenues to essentially repay their building of it. But at the end of that, it became ours. So it's now ours. If I remember correctly, the $1 million is about a 16 or represents about 16 or 17 million dollars or 16 or 17 years worth of revenues. So, you know, who knows 16 to 17 years, whether cell towers of this type are still going to be in as high demand as they are currently. This enables us to get that revenue now. The advantage there being that we're looking to build a new town court and to avoid having to go out to bond or to minimize the bond amount is a huge plus, because for every dollar we have to bond, it costs $1.50 to pay it back, which obviously has an impact on our taxpayers. So by getting this revenue up front, it will allow us to save money in the long run. So I think it's a win-win all around. Any further comments, questions? Anything from the public or online? Come on up.
Again, Mike.
What, please wait till you get to the
Yes, sorry.
microphone and introduce yourself.
Sorry. Again, my concern is you
Please
talk about.
introduce yourself.
My name's Nicholas Hirsch again. My concern again is this going to impact or have any cost whatsoever, regardless of what the tax rate is? Is it going to have any impact or cost on taxes, specifically property taxes? And the second question is, why do we need a cell tower that you're buying? Why do we need that? For what
We're
purpose?
selling it.
Selling it.
Oh, you're selling it.
We
I'm
own
sorry,
it already.
I'm sorry, my
So
misunderstanding.
it's going to reduce our need to levy taxes by $1 million. Not all in one year, obviously, but so it's not going to increase taxes. It's going to lower taxes
Because you're selling it.
because we're selling it.
You're getting rid of it. Okay. Is that going to affect any type of cell communications at all in the area?
No.
Okay.
Any further comments or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 16-234, 2022 to commit to the town's matching funds for a state aid to municipalities or similar grant for the new town court.
Second.
So again, we're going to be pursuing state aid to reduce the cost of the town court. The goal is to either not have to bond or to minimize the cost of the bond. So any state aid that can help us build that court would be beneficial. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, there's a lot of grants out there right now. A lot of money, whether it's Build Back Better or, other state aid programs, REDC money, what's Regional Economic Development Council money. Unfortunately, I've yet to find any besides the state aid to municipalities that cover courts. So I'm putting together a proposal, and it basically, again, talks about that currently we're renting the facility in a commercial office park. It's completely, in my opinion, unsuitable for that purpose. It's got many problems with court security. has deficiencies in the ability to facilitate protective measures during a pandemic. We have a problem that it only has one courtroom. So for instance, if there is a trial going on like there was recently and an arraignment comes in, they actually have to interrupt the trial, do the arraignment, and then continue the trial. So this new court would have a second, smaller courtroom so that they could be doing the arraignment in that while the jury trial is going on in the main courtroom. If you recall, we did the design in, I think it was pre-pandemic. And then because of all the issues with the unknown with regards to the budget, it's kind of been put on hold. But right now revenues are actually very good. And so we're bringing it back up. It's currently, the construction cost is estimated at 6.25 million, but I'm sure that's going to be going up. If it wasn't going up, we could probably do it without any bonding. We're probably going to have a resolution next week to approve a referendum, because to get on the referendum for November, you actually have to have the stuff in by August 7th. So unlike the way the bond referendum was written for the library, it's going to have the words up to, so that we're not committed to bonding the entire amount, like unfortunately we were with the library. So I've got someone getting us an update on this cost. We're going to look through what we've got available and put together a referendum to approve the bond if necessary. If we don't approve the bond, we may still be able to build the court because, again, sales tax revenue, mortgage tax revenues are all been up. So granted, our costs are also up between gas prices, asphalt prices, cost of living for employees, you name it, costs are up. So, but again, our goal is to, the other thing we'll be getting is the additional ARPA monies. So we should be getting that second payment of ARPA monies this year. So we should have a significant portion of that price tag. If I had to guess, I would say that we might have to bond up to 2 million. We're working with our bond counsel. My hope is that we can do it such that the debt service on the bonds is less than what we're paying today on the rent for the court, and therefore it's a wash to the residents. So that's what we're looking at. Questions? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 16-235, 2022 to update the previously approved building permit fee schedule for special use permits and communication towers.
Second.
So realizing that we are very shortly going to be approving next year's fee schedules, we wanted to do these few updates because there's a couple situations where they're coming up and we noticed we had some stuff missing. So for instance, there wasn't a fee for people when they come in, and we have to do all the review of the cell towers. When someone is doing an equipment change out, there has to be a structural analysis done, the whole 9 yards. We didn't actually have a fee for that. So we wanted to make sure that's in there. And then as we talked about, there's some stuff with regards to renewal of an unmodified expired application for a special use permit. And then looking to change the way we do the fees. We've talked about increasing the cost of the commercial because the amount of review, when you look at the cost we've had to do, the 150 is pretty low. But again, I'm not proposing that we change that for this year, but at the next meeting or the meeting after that, when we do the the fee schedule for the following budget year, I would recommend we increase that 150. The residential ones are much easier. And just to be clear, because people say, well, what residential special use permits are there? The last one we issued was somebody who wanted to raise goats. Or, if somebody wants to have more than 3 dogs. So that they're very uncommon, and they're not a lot of work, unlike the commercial ones. So, anyway. Any questions, comments? Anything from the public or online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-236/2022 to authorize the attorney for the town to sign the certiorari stipulation agreement for AFP 108 Corporation.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Before we go to the next resolution, I do want to make one comment on it. We did talk about it at the workshop, but I'd like to specifically mention great work by our assessor and her team. Settled the certiorari action without any refund of taxes already collected. So it was a good work by her team, her and her team, including the attorneys representing us to get that outcome. So it doesn't help just the town. It helps the school district. It helps the fire district, helps the ambulance. So again, great job on a very good outcome.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-237/2022 to appoint Marcy Reynolds to the planning board.
Seconded.
So we've had a lot of really good candidates apply. I was able to get notifications out to everybody, both Marcy, that she was selected, and the individuals who were not. It's interesting. We were going through the list, just talking about, because there's a candidate who's applied a couple times and we really like him and would love him on the board, and it's challenging. We've had so many great candidates in the years. It's challenging to figure out where we could fit them. But, like I said, hopefully that the quality of candidates will continue, because we've had a lot of really strong candidates lately.
Yeah.
Including Marcy. So I met with the deputy town clerk, Heather Voss, as well as payroll, to make sure that we can onboard her quickly. And this time it's not just the figurative or metaphorical onboard, it's actually getting on the board, literal, but because their first meeting that she will be presiding in is next Tuesday. So any other comments, questions?
Welcome aboard, Marcy. Thank you.
Hearing none further, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 16-238/2022 to make the attached changes and authorize the attached attendance incentive pay.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So we will not be, I will not be putting forth resolution 16-239, since we've decided that we're going to keep the public hearing open for chapter 121. So that one will be not be motioned. And that concludes our resolutions. Do we have additional discussion items or comments from the public? Come on up.
Good evening, fellow board members. As you remember from.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Nicholas Hirsch. As you remember, I addressed in a closed session at a workshop on Monday of this past week, the issue of these alleged inflated, overly inflated reassessments, and the supporting documentation that is lacking or missing in the absence of that pursuant to the materials that I handed to you lovely people, okay, on that date, which included the New York State Manual, that is the publication that's put out by the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance about how to determine an overall assessment level with a systematic four-step approach that must be done across the state jurisdiction in every jurisdiction. That was one thing that was put forth. And then the other thing was the inconsistencies in the increase LOA notice, which is the level assessment notice that every resident has to get mailed pursuant to the tax law, which is a plain reading. And I want to point out that not every single law requires interpretation. There are laws that require interpretation by a judge, yes. And then there are those laws that do not. It depends on how the law is written, how it's structured, and the wording and the language. Naturally, the common person, obviously in these types of situations, may not be able to have a plain reading, depending on what it is that we're talking about. So not everything requires a lawyer, judicial interpretation, or what have you. Under the tax law, it's a very plain, simple reading about the fact that the law states that the town or the jurisdiction, and again, I'm paraphrasing, so I don't get misquoted and mischaracterized, that a notice of increase in terms of assessment shall be mailed to every single property owner in the town. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's either 510 or 510A. I'm not sure which one it is. Now, I submitted to you a copy of the cover letter that Mr. Schultz received. I believe it was on the 20th of June in an email electronically, which was attached, which states all the following violations of every single law that I have been able to find based on these assessments that I have already explained that's been going on for the last 6 years since we've been here, and probably prior to that, but I'm not going to address that. Again, one of the board members, I think it was Mrs. Right, had asked me, am I aware of what goes on in other towns or what have you, that sort of thing. And here's the thing, I can only speak, okay, to what I have direct personal knowledge upon information and belief upon that. That is all I can talk to. Whether or not there's a town supervisors meeting that goes on that Mr. Schultz attends and what they do in Pittsford, wherever it is, I cannot state to you directly that I have knowledge of that because I'm not there. I only know what I have in front of me. Okay. And I'm going by the evidence that is in front of me. The evidence which Mr. Schultz doesn't want to think is grounded in fact, but it is, because when you get FOIL requests to come back saying that there's no data to support these assessments, okay, and so forth, and the standards that the state puts out, and they deliberately put a manual out. They don't do it for the fun of it. There's a reason why, okay? You talked about earlier about these fires, right, that people are complaining about. And I appreciate Mr. Schultz trying to respect people's individual rights without having to necessarily make everybody else uncomfortable. Well, that is part of an individual amendment right of freedom and so forth. It is hard to enforce. It is difficult not to trample on one's constitutional provisions. Okay, yes, it becomes a problem. And I agree with him on that issue. I also agree with Mr. Young, who I've sent several emails that I've CC'd so far, about certain things pertaining to one's freedom to speak freely, due process, this sort of thing. In this particular instance, just like with the fire example, maybe it's not the same thing, but the principle is the same. The overriding principle is the same. Everybody that's an American citizen, naturalized or born here, has certain inalienable rights that you cannot violate. Okay, it's that simple. It's plain. Okay, we talk about due process. There must be an equitable, fair due process by which things are carried out by local governments, which are political subdivisions of the state government, which is a political subdivision of the federal government. And incidentally, there's an entire book that you can go to the Legal Law Library at the Appellate Division on East Avenue that has an entire whole book devoted, believe it or not, to claims that are brought against jurisdictions and how that's brought under jurisprudence. New York State is unique in the sense that it's the only state in the entire, probably United States. I don't know of any other states that have something that's called the Court of Claims. The Court of Claims is set up specifically when a person has a grievance to redress government, whether it's the town, village, city, state, okay, whatever it is, this is where you have to bring it. You cannot sue a political subdivision in a regular court of law. Okay, it has to be brought there. That's why it was set up. Okay, the Court of Claims Act was passed for that reason. The state realized that they needed a way, okay, just like you are trying to find a way about these fires that are being done and make provision, make allowances in the town charter or whatever you call it. It's the same thing. They realized there was a necessity for it, and that's what they did. And so then when a person has a legal concern that their, let's say, 1983, USC 1983 deprivation of rights have been violated, then they have to bring that claim within that court's jurisdiction. That's the law. I don't make the rules. I don't make the laws. Okay, Mr. Schultz doesn't make the laws for the state or for the federal government. There are rules that are set up that are in place for this reason. Okay, we all understand this. We all live by them. We agree to live by them in a civilized society. Okay, and so the whole idea of over assessing people without having the documentation to support it goes right back to the very basic fundamental principle of taxation without representation. In the spirit of that law, this is being taxed or assessed for taxes, okay, without having the supporting disclosure of documentation to show where it came from. Now, let me just be clear. In the FOIL request that came back, if you've read it, I submitted it. I don't know if you had a chance to review it. Ms. Voss stated that there were no data. There's no data on record at all for what I am requesting that is listed in the manual pursuant to what the standards are and what must be carried out, whether it's done manually or by computer software. Now, we know that in this day and age, nobody is going to sit down in a vast jurisdiction like the state of New York for the whole state and sit there manually. It would take forever. We have computers to do that. We understand that. I'm an engineer. I have a computer engineering degree to go on a math degree. I've designed circuits for this purpose. I understand this. We understand that. Okay, but the idea is if you're going to use a computer software generated program to generate these things, then you must have the raw data, okay, by which you arrived at your determination. And the state manual requires that you do. There has to be a validated certification of results of where you got it from. And if a property owner decides to challenge that assessment, how is one going to do that without the data to look at? That's if they can understand it, if they've got the skills to know what it means. But if, let's say, one has the skill to know what it means, that person can't even challenge it because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. How am I supposed to take the data that I used with the state's report, which I did, and run manual calculations, which I came up, which is not that hard to do if you know what you're doing, and then take that data set, right, and compare that to another data set that doesn't exist? I don't have a set of data to compare it to. All I have is what the state sent Ms. Nicodemus, who's sitting here, comparative sales of 3 properties that were sold from October of last year through a date of this year. Okay, and those comparative properties are similar to ours in terms of somewhat similar, as close as they could find. Okay, the problem there is that, again, what I couldn't get into the other day is what I'm going to get into now briefly. There are two sets of cost adjustments here that were not factored in. The first set of cost adjustments, which I factored into my calculations, which Ms. Nicodemus has those calculations because I submitted every single page of evidence, including everything that I did, using the state's own report, which is an official business record, which they sent. And when I factored in from the baseline assessment, which I came up with, which is approximately $170,000, I believe, in $18 or something like that, okay? And then you take the cost adjustments for the differences in square footage of the living space, square footage of the garage space, which was not counted, the condition, which is definitely a contributing factor to the overall level of assessment, which the manual states you must take that into account because that could seriously make everything completely skewed, completely off, completely. And that was not taken into consideration. So the appraisal that was done, that you got the valuation page from of 140,000, what that basically means is that if you were to make all the repairs that were noted based on the pictures, what it needs, and you were to do that today, and as you did it all right now today, then that means there's $30,000 worth of repairs, including an extra $9,000 for the roof, because the $1,000 that he stated on there was just, he thought that would be the cost of getting an estimate, because he doesn't know what the roof would cost. I have already gotten that estimate. I will be submitting it. And I've already submitted a copy to Mr. Schultz via electronic email as an attachment. I'm not saying to Mr. Schultz that he's supposed to pay for my roof or anything like that. I'm simply supplying information, documentation to show that what the appraiser came up with and what it actually is in reality, okay, is in fact similar. He came up with an estimation of what it would cost to get an estimate. But then going out and getting the estimate shows, yes, it's going to cost $10,000. People in my neighborhood, right across the street, even as this morning, are doing their roofs, okay, because they're worried about the cost with everything going up. As Mr. Schultz mentioned, everything has gone up. Everything's gone up considerably, okay? So these are the things that have to be taken into account. Now, these cost repairs have not been done as of yet. If you were to do them today, then the house would then be worth, okay, about $170,000 with those repairs done. But that does not equal $182,000. That's $12,000 over that. And then not to mention that when you run the comparison results and allow the cost adjustments for the differences in the parameters that were used by the state's three comparables in that report, okay, and you normalize our house to what the three are by allowing for those adjustments and those differences, okay, there is a difference of about roughly $20,000 on that cost adjustment with those difference running those parameters on the mean average. Mean average, just to define it very clearly, means a mean average is not a mean. A mean is, let's say you've got a set of data, you've got 5 datas. You add them up and then you subtract by the total number, divide by the total number, and you get a mean, okay? When you talk about a mean average, that means that you take that mean now, and then you have to now average out everything else that you've got means for. You add those means together, divide by that number, and then you get a mean average. That's how it's done. Okay, so when you figure out what those cost adjustments are for the parameters for each individual property out of the 3, okay, and you do that for each one, get those mean differences between ours and theirs, add up those mean differences of each one, divide by the number, which is 3 in that case, that's the sample size, that's what you get for the overall parameter for each parameter. So there's a mean difference for square footage, there's a mean difference for garage space, there's a mean difference for for if there's a swimming pool or not, based on what the national average is, which I did research and I did submit proof of what the national average is for that, because 2 of the properties had an above ground swimming pool. Okay, all these things have to be considered. And when you do all of that, the cost of judgments came out to be approximately, I don't have it, I have it in my thing there, but I'm just going to estimate because off the top of my head, I don't have the exact figure because it's right in there in the file, but it runs out to be about roughly about 21,000 and something or something along those lines. Now, it's very interesting that when you do that calculation, correct, that amount almost comes out to be, not quite, the $32,000 difference, or it's within a $10,000 range or something along those lines. Because the difference is basically is the garages. The garage space was very, very much big. Our garage only has 230 square feet. The other three properties have way more than that. 34 Wickwine had 500 and something square feet in the garage. These things were not considered. And by the way, those numbers were submitted by the assessor's office.
If I may, Mr.
Yes.
Hirsch, just in the interest of completing the business of the board, what is your specific ask here of the town board?
Well, the specific ask is that if there is no data and the assessment was done this way without any supporting proof, the town board has the ability to do certain things that an assessor may not, since Mr. Schultz, and I don't disagree with you, Mr. Schultz, on the idea that you may not have any direct authority over the assessor. That is probably true. But since it's structured that way, the town board then has the ability possibly to do something, maybe not about the assessment, but certainly about behavior and about not following the laws in terms of what the state has laid out with what their requirements are, which in turn leads to violating my rights under taxation or over assessment taxation without being given the evidence to support it. I have a right to disclosure under due process. Okay, and that goes to 14th Amendment rights. It goes to deprivation, USC 1983 civil rights deprivation, because I'm entitled to an equitable due process. You can't just come up with a number from anywhere that you choose and then not say where you got it from. Do you understand what my point is?
So I'm hearing you say that you want to have a due process review. And I believe the state has established that with the Board of Assessment review.
But that has not, yes, they have, but that's not the, you see, the problem with that is that that's the issue. If that process was fair and was to bear out the way it should, and if they were to do things what they're supposed to do, which they haven't been doing, they've corrected one defect by putting their determination on the right form. They didn't do that back in 2017. Now they're doing it, only now because I brought it up. Okay. It's not basically being done properly. It is not due process. Okay. Let me say this. If due process, if there's a process that is put in place to secure due process rights for people, but that process itself is tainted, okay, for whatever the reason, then it's not due process. A person can make a claim, okay, that the due process procedures that are there may or may not, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying it may or may not conform to what it should be. You would think that if you submit the proper evidence that is fact, that's based in factual stuff, not opinion, not someone's opinion, that you would think that the process would bear out fairly. That's what you would think. But we all know that in real life, what happens in theory doesn't necessarily happen in practice.
So again, in the interest of being able to complete the business of the town board here tonight in a timely fashion, what is it that you would like the town board to take a look at? Or
well, I think what Mr. Schultz, in the email that he sent me, I think it was after the town board meeting, they said something to the effect in the first sentence that they're going to rerun the report, unless I'm wrong. I have that email.
You know, basically what I said is,
okay,
so a couple things. There's a difference between data and records. And as someone who participated in a case of first impression, specifically with intellectual property rights versus FOIL rights, I can tell you there is, in that case of first impression, there was a big distinction between data and records. And so, for instance, as you may know, I started a company for doing aerial imagery, and we offer our data, our images to image database to governments, counties, states, municipalities to use for their analyses. And a clear distinction was made between the difference between data and records, and that is someone had tried to foil our entire image database, saying that, well, it's part of public record. It's not. When one of our images is used in a report, that generates a record, and that specific image could be foiled, but the entire database could not.
I understand that,
Right,
but
so-
I'm not foiling the entire
Well, hold
database.
on.
Oh, go ahead.
So you said that, we said there's no data. I believe that the statement was that there were no records. In response to your, and you should have in your mail, the response to the
Appeal?
the appeal. I emailed it to you. I did ask the assessor to run some records from.
All right, maybe that's what I
Yeah,
misunderstood.
so I basically asked her to create some records specifically for your property that give the underlying data that was in both your property as well as the
Three comparables?
the comparables. And then we did also the data for the initial output for the neighborhoods that the assessor then uses as input to her
I mean, you're talking about
process.
stratification of properties? Is that what you mean? Or
Uh,
neighborhoods?
I don't know the terminology. Michelle, could you answer that question? No, well, no, you need to come up to a microphone. You can use this one up here.
All right, but I'm not done yet.
Please don't talk from the audience.
Maybe I'll step aside.
Yeah, step aside. You can just use that one there.
So if it's all right, when he's through, I'd like to make some brief comments, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, but could you clarify what that, it was under the section on the CAMA. I forgot what that report actually was.
So basically, it was similar to what Mr. Hirsch was talking about with regard to mean, median, coefficient dispersion formulas, assessing which neighborhoods were at what LOA, level of assessment, and which neighborhoods needed reassessment the most.
Sure. And then I will note that I also included as an attachment the letter that you keep claiming doesn't exist and has publicly accused me of being a liar by saying it exists.
Well, I didn't publicly accuse, I said it in an email. And I said that this was upon information and belief at the time. Remember, I'm going by with the evidence I have in front of me. Now, if I, have done that, I apologize if you take that the wrong way. But I'm
You
going,
said I am a liar. You said I have not produced, therefore the letter does not exist. You stated that as a fact.
but I
That
didn't
is
have
not
what
a-
it was at the time. I
You're
didn't have it.
interrupting. That is different than the letter does not exist. Right?
Okay, well, can I say something, please, in regards to that? When that request initially, I met with you on the 17th, I believe, which was a Friday. And I have that thing digitally recorded, as you know, and you've got a copy of it. Okay, if you listen to the very first thing, roughly in the very first 10 minutes, listen to what you actually said. That's all I'm going to say. You listen to, I don't have the ability to play it back for the town board here. And I'd like to get an email from one of you to send you some of these things. You can listen to it for yourself. But at that time, basically, given the time frame of 25 days, why does it take that 25 days to produce something that you claim that you got from the state in an electronic email? They're obviously not going to mail it to you. They're going to do it through an email. Obviously, that's what everybody does today, unless I'm wrong. Okay, why would it take so long? Here's my issue.
Do you want the answer?
Well, yeah, can I
Because
just?
I couldn't find it. So I sent back an email to them saying, could you resend it? Okay. And I also sent one to the assessor asking her to send it. As soon as I got them, I sent it to the town clerk for the FOIL request. The one that was out that you were appealing did not make that request. It was a subsequent. That was request 151. You asked for the letter in FOIL request 170, which had not been fully completed by the the town clerk. So even though I had sent her the data, it hadn't gotten to you yet because she had not filled the rest of the stuff.
Okay.
You've put in a huge number of FOIL requests.
That is
asking
my
for-
right, though. All right, what is the point of
Let me
that?
finish,
Okay.
asking for a lot of data. So yes, it does take time to respond and fulfill all those stuff, because guess what? They have a lot of other duties to do besides just fulfilling your.
I
FOIL
understand that, but a
requests.
letter that you say that was electronically sent, if the assessor had it, then why would it be so difficult to get a hold of it? Why would it take 25 days?
Because how do I
may-
find it?
Well,
If
let
if
him-
I may, I think that the question at this point might be irrelevant. It sounds like you
Yes, it
already.
is.
Well,
have the
actually,
letter.
you think
have
it's
it.
irrelevant, but
If
he's
the
the one.
FOIL
that-
request was complied with, I'm not entirely sure what the.
Well, the issue is that it wasn't
Point.
fully complied with, because what he's talking about in that FOIL request, would you have a copy of the response? It says that there's no record of any
Well,
data.
that's separate from the letter. The letter.
I
was
know
not
the
part of
letter's
that
separate.
FOIL
We,
request.
yes, I will, the letter is separate. I understand that. But I'm addressing what she's asking.
Mhm.
Okay? What I requested was specific parameters and information, okay, that is listed in the manual as part of the 4-step systematic approach that is supposed to be followed. Okay? And these things go into the assessment. That's how it's arrived at. Okay? And the point is, as of, let's say, when the initial notice was sent and mailed out, okay, that notice obviously doesn't contain any of that. Not that I'm saying I would expect that it would, but then when I foiled it, right, to get it, the response that I got back through Ms. Voss, it's not her fault, she's doing her job, was that these specific things that I'm asking for, which is not the whole database, it's relevant to the assessment, it's limited scope, that's limited to how was this assessment for this subject property arrived at. And those parameters have to be used to arrive at that assessment to show how that was arrived at. You can stratify neighborhoods. You can use comparables if the law permits it. You can do all that. But at the end of the day, okay, I have a legal right, if I'm going to challenge something, okay, I have to see where it came from. Now, if I don't know how it was arrived at, and I don't know where it came from, how in God's name on this green earth am I going to challenge it? Especially if I've got a separate set of, and Mr. Young, this should go to you too. Okay, especially since I have a separate set of data calculations that are correct, that are consistent with the discipline, that do add up, that bear out what the appraiser, okay, came up with. And I don't appreciate Mr. Schultz sending me an email telling me, oh, the appraiser lowballed the amount because this is what they do.
That's not what I actually said.
Well,
I s-
I'm paraphrasing.
Well, you are improperly paraphrasing.
All
What I
right.
said is appraisers have a range they can work with. And quite often, and are you really going to deny that this happens? That
He didn't do that.
I
I'm
didn't
not going to.
say he did. I'm saying it sometimes happens. So the idea that appraisal is gospel is just not the case.
I
That's
didn't
all
say-
I said.
I didn't say that it's not gospel. I'm saying that the impression was, based on the language, was that maybe this has something to do with why it was a lower amount. And I'm telling you, the appraiser, just on record, for the record, okay, did not have any information as to why this appraisal was being done. I deliberately kept that out of it because I knew this would come up. Okay, I wanted him to do this unbiasedly, unwittingly knowing what the reason was. So there wouldn't be any possibility of him getting wind, okay, to lower it for any, let's say, personal reason. And who knows what his experience is with the town or anywhere else. I specifically didn't tell him why. And he based his appraisal based on time adjusted cost values of three comparables that he found that the state did not use, because those three comparables were comparables that fit. The highest one was 160,000. It is a big difference there between that and the other two that the state sent. And let me finish. And the fact is that he did not basically do anything like that, because he took that and did a calculation based on those three, okay, came up with a valuation, then looked at the cost of repair, and then subtracted what the value of repair would be of what you have to do to fix the things that are really wrong. Not these stupid little things, but the major things, such as the roof, the driveway, the deck. came up with that amount, subtracted that amount, came up with a valuation, and that's the 140,000.
So, Mr. Hirsch, if I may, because we've already been here close to a half an hour, I believe, hearing your part of the story here. Can you tell me in one sentence or less exactly what your request is of the town board? Because
Well-
as I hear you, I'm losing the thread of what it is exactly that you want us to.
Well,
to
first of
take
all,
action.
I don't know what you are able to do and what you're not able to do. I'm simply giving you the information, okay? Because you see, here's the issue, and Mr. Young, you should already know this. You're an attorney, okay? So you should know that mitigation of damages is something that courts require. You cannot walk into a courtroom with a lawsuit, whether it's the Court of Claims, State Supreme, I don't care where you go. If you do not give the parties, whoever that may be, whether it's a governmental authority, the opportunity to correct any defects that there may be with what the grievance is, and processes that are already in place do not bear out or are not working because it's just not happening, then you have to then give everybody more than ample chance, okay, to correct the defect, whatever that, if they can, whatever that is. Now, I'm going to tell you very honestly, he says that the town has taken an exorbitant amount of time or a lot of time or whatever it is. Well, the town's time doesn't necessarily equal the amount of time that I have. I've spent, I don't know how many days, hours you want to so far preparing to do this because it is unfair. It's not right. Okay. There's evidence to show that it isn't. And I don't have any set of data or anything specific to the assessment, what went into it to show where it came from or to justify it. Okay. And therefore, from my standpoint, you know, the only redress for it, unless it's corrected, is a legal form. And as far as as far as discovery is concerned, this goes to Mr. Young and Mr. Schultz. Mr. Young, you should be aware that pretrial discovery is something that is carried out on a relatively routine basis, on an informal level. It does not require a judge's order. That's only if you make a motion to compel discovery, then it requires a judge's signature. But prior to going into a court, okay, and I know this is frustrating, it's frustrating for me too, okay? But I'm simply here to present what it is that's there, give the town a chance to correct the issue. Some issues could be corrected, and some it may be too late. That depends on what can and cannot be corrected.
So, Mr. Hirsch, I appreciate that you've brought information to us. You said that that's what your intention to do was. to bring-
Whether or not you
Bring
can,
information to us, which you have done. I think you need to take 1 minute to conclude your statements so that we can move on with the business of the meeting and finish what we need to finish here in this. meeting.
if there is new information that I've not received as of yet, which is waiting, I will have to review that information. Understand this. I can't just sit there and like, okay, you sent it, you say it's there. I have to look at it and see what it is. So I think you should already know that there's going to be further issues with this as we move on, because I don't know what's in the information until I have a chance to look at it. I have to have a chance to review what's being submitted that I have not received. Now, once I receive that, correct, I'm going to seriously sit down like I would anything that anybody gives me, and I'm going to review it, and I'm going to look at it. And just so Mr. Schultz knows, I spoke with Mr. Murphy today of the Monroe County Tax Office, and I explained to him that there is a complaint that's in there that is sitting at the county attorney's office, okay, that the state also received, Ms. Palumbo, who's the director of the Department of Tax, and that complaint has the same documents that the assessor got, all 113 pages.
Okay, that was 1 minute, so I appreciate.
So do you
your time.
understand
Thank you.
what I'm saying? We're probably going to have to do this again, basically, because I have to review the information that he says that is there. Okay, I don't know that anything is, I don't know anything it isn't. But until I've had a chance to review that, upon that review, based on what mathematical things are there, based on what's in the manual, and whether or not it bears out where it's coming from, then I will then have to make comparisons between that data and what I ran manually, and then see whether or not the two jive. Okay, and in addition to that, any mitigation of damages at this point, I've instructed Mr. Schultz to consult his attorney, Mr. Young was sitting right there, do it through him. Legal counsel is your best avenue for that. He's best suited to advise the town on what to do. Okay,
I'm just going to stop you here. We don't need advice from you.
all right,
Thank you,
well,
though.
I'm gonna ask that a resolution be passed, that Mr. Young be, because he's saying that there's got to be a resolution. I don't know how to get a resolution on the what agenda or whatever. I don't know what the process is. I haven't seen anything that tells you what the process is, but I'm verbally going to request that this resolution or this proposal be taken under consideration, to have legal counsel represent the town in this matter, to detoxify the relationship that's there and avoid any further, let's say, problems, issues. It's not a good idea for litigants to be discussing things if there's counsel there
Is there
that can do
actually
that.
litigation? Have you filed
Okay.
a case?
Now, let me answer that question.
That's a yes or no.
No,
question.
it's not just a simple yes or no. Because the steps to litigation, there are requirements in the law that have steps to litigation. You have to file a notice of claim pursuant to the general municipal law.
Did you file a notice of claim?
I'm getting ready to. I'm waiting for
Okay,
the
so-
outcome. I'm waiting.
So the answer is no. you
Not
have
just as of
filed.
yet, but I will be.
Okay. That's
Um,
all I've asked. So
Mr.
the answer
Hirsch,
is no right
yeah, at this time, we need to, we need to move on to our next item of business. So
Okay.
we appreciate your information.
One
but it's
question
time
I
for us
just
to
have
move
for
on.
you, ma'am. Is there anything that the town board can do regarding this issue?
We will take a look at the information that you provided, but at this time, we can't provide any promises because
Oh, no, I
the Board
understand
of
that.
the assessor is accountable to the state more so than to the board.
You know, and I tell you, I
For-
understand.
For real property tax.
Yeah,
laws.
I understand, but just one other thing I want to point for the record, I've tried to make contact. I've made an effort to reach out to them and talk to them. The problem with it is there is no number, okay, that you can call to reach that office. When you call the number, which is the main number, which is what I have, okay, you get the star people and there is no direct number to reach. There's no email.
I do understand. I work with the state quite a bit and I understand the challenges of contacting the state, but at this time, we really do need to move on.
But
and
I'm
finish
just letting
this
you
up
know
with
that I
business
have
of the town.
tried to contact them. Okay, so in other words, this is between the town and me, not between the state and me. What I do with regards to what I do about the state, that's separate. The town is the town, the state is the state.
Mr. Hirsch, what I'm saying is we need to conclude.
All right, I just want to make sure that he understands that you understand that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to make two notes for the record. Monday's meeting was not a closed meeting. It is an open public meeting. So that was misstated at the beginning. Second thing I will note is that there has been a lot of talk of due process. And you had talked about you wanting us to reprimand or do something with our assessor. Our assessor is also entitled due process, as is anybody. So again, one of the things in that regards, one of those things in due process is that you have a right, in other words, we're not going to fire her, to use the extreme, based off of your opinions, because right now they are opinions. And so, she has a due process as well. Okay, no,
clear.
you're done.
Let me just say
No,
We need to
you're
wrap
done.
up the business of the town.
just want to say.
You're, no.
I'm afraid your time is.
Thank you. Michelle, would you like to address the town board, please?
Okay, I will try to make this very brief.
I'm not accepting service
No,
of
no.
anything that you're giving me unless it is done through FOIL. So let the record reflect, I'm handing it back. If she wants to do it through your attorney with an app, she can serve the board, but she can have the attorney serve me, Mr. Young sitting right there.
Mr. Hirsch, please.
You actually did receive this through FOIL.
I don't know what.
To an
the
extent.
FOIL
Well,
is.
maybe not, maybe not. I
I
take that back. You did receive this in an email from me, I believe, some of this.
Well, then I don't need her to send it to me.
Mr.
Okay.
Hirsch, please, no more conversation from the audience.
Okay, so I will respectfully request that you allow me to speak just as I allowed you to speak. And I just want to make a couple of quick points. So it seems to me, in listening to this for quite some time, the end of May, the scenario overall, there seem to be quite a few misunderstandings or misinterpretations. So perhaps I can clear some of that up and alleviate some of Mr. Hirsch's concerns in the process. So the first item that I'd like to bring to your attention is Mr. Hirsch's assessment notice, which he calls an LOA increase notice, which is actually not an LOA increase notice. Mr. Hirsch stated that the document is irrelevant based on the statement being made on it that New York State requires an assessment each year. And that is not the case. That is incorrect in Mr. Hirsch's words. And so that is why he does not want to pay any attention to this particular document. However, if you'll notice in green, there is another part of that section that Mr. Hirsch quoted, which I think he just must have misunderstood or overlooked it. So the statement says, New York State law requires all properties in each municipality to be assessed, and this is the section in green, at market value or at a uniform level of assessment each year. So it does not say that New York State law requires all properties in each municipality to be assessed each year. It says that the main operative phrase here is that at market value or at a uniform level of assessment. That's what the LOA is, and that's what the equalization rate is. So in essence, it's basically saying either you're going to be at market rate, which is 100% of the market value of what the properties are going for, or you're going to be at a uniform level of assessment throughout the municipality, which basically means that Mr. Hirsch's home at 62 Wickwine, if we are at a level of assessment of 82% of the market value, then another property across town is also going to be at 82% of the market value. So that is what that statement means. It does not mean that New York State requires that we do a reassessment every year. Moving on.
Just to be clear, it basically is saying that all properties have to be assessed at the same level. So whether it's 100%, 80%, 54% if you're Webster, they all have to be equal. That's what that statement is about. No, you've already had plenty of time to talk.
Please don't.
Okay.
interrupt me, sir. So the second thing that Mr. Hirsch brought up yesterday, or possibly the third, was in regard to the back of an assessment information notice, that he received in the past. And on the back of that notice, apparently it said something along the lines of comparables are not an acceptable method of calculating assessments. However, once again, on the second page, if you notice at the very bottom of the page, it actually says a comparison of similar assessments is not an acceptable method to use as a basis of value. So there's a difference between sales value, market value, versus assessment value. You cannot compare assessment to assessment. You have to compare each home individually to comparable sales similar to that property in the immediate vicinity. So again, I'm painting a general theme here. Bit of a misunderstanding, possibly a misinterpretation. I'm sure there was no negative intent there, just a simple, possibly misinterpretation. So the third thing that Mr. Hirsch made a point of was with regard to his appraisal, stating that he had until July 1st to submit his appraisal. If you look at the statement in green on the very same page, you'll see it says an appraisal with an evaluation date close to July 1st, 2021, completed by a New York State licensed appraiser. That is an example of supporting documentation that is acceptable to the Board of Assessment review. So I can see how that would have been, you know, a little bit of a mix-up, seeing the July 1st date, possibly thinking he had till July this year to submit his assessment, his, appraisal. However, that being said, I did forward his appraisal to the Board of Assessment review, even though it was submitted well after the Board of Assessment review stopped meeting. In spite of that particular statement. Another thing.
I just want to make clear, and I've had lots of discussions with Michelle, so that's why I understand some of the stuff. To be clear, when stuff is assessed, there's two key dates. One is March 1st, which is a taxable status date. So that's depends who owns it. Is it, you know, does it have a pilot? Is it on the taxable roll? Is it on roll 1? Is it on roll 8? That type of stuff. It's the condition of the property as of March 1st, that's taxable status date. But in terms of the value, it's July 1st of the previous year. And so when you look at it, that's why they want for the supporting documentation, a valuation date close to that date, because that's the date, right, of it's the previous summer.
Right.
Is when they do it. And some of that also has to do with, because when you start to get into commercial properties, it has to do with income statements and things like that, which of course, you'll never get the income for this year, right? So that's why it's done for the previous year. So again, to be even, that's why they pick the summer of the previous year as that valuation date is for that reason. So that's where some of the confusion comes in. A lot of people don't realize, and we had this when during COVID, hotels came in and said, you need to lower my assessment because I've not been able to book any business this year because of COVID. Well, it doesn't affect their assessment for that year. It affects their assessment the following year. And so again, that's one of the things. There's a lot of people who miss that. It's July the previous year. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So one more thing I'd like to mention. So Mr. Hirsch was kind enough to send me the manual that he keeps referring to. And it is actually not an assessor's manual. It is an owner's manual for a homeowner, titled Level of Assessment Determination and Owner's Manual. It does have a lot of useful information in it. However, there are volumes and volumes and volumes of assessor's manuals. It is not one document, and the document that he keeps referring to is actually not an assessor's manual. And I'd be happy to forward that, him stating that this is the manual you should be following if you should so choose. Mr. Hirsch asked the question, how do I challenge the assessment, and what about my due process? So there is a process in place. As a matter of fact, many municipalities don't do half as much as this particular municipality with regard to the process. Mr. Hirsch and I had over an hour-long meeting on May 20th, having an informal review of his assessment. I gave him the information that he asked for. During that meeting, the next step was for him to review the information, and if he felt the assessment was incorrect, then he would need to bring documentation to the Board of Assessment Review to prove that his assessment is incorrect. So if I were Mr. Hirsch, what I would have done is I would have taken pictures of my home, which is what was in the appraisal, because his main point was that the condition of the home was a big part of the issue, as well as the adjustments, which, by the way, we do make adjustments for the different differences between the homes, including garages, as well as a time adjustment for the sales of the different properties. So unfortunately, during the bar hearing, we gave Mr. Hirsch three times the amount of time that we give a normal property owner under normal circumstances. and by normal, I guess I'm saying residential.
Mhm.
But he did not talk about his assessment. He did not talk about proof of why his assessment was incorrect. He talked about the board's qualifications, my qualifications, and told the board that he knew where they lived. Just lots of not very helpful things. So if Mr. Hirsch at that time would have brought pictures of the condition of his home and provided some kind of proof that he was deserving of a decrease in his assessment, I think that would have helped him, and perhaps he didn't understand that part of the process. I don't know, but moving forward, that definitely would be a good tip. Also, with regard to the foils that Mr. Hirsch,
Actually, before you go to the foils, let me just make another clarification in case board members are not aware. Under real property tax law, the assessor's appraisal is assumed to be correct. So the burden of proof is actually on the property owner to prove it is in error, not the other way around.
Who makes that law?
New York State, real property tax law.
so to move on to Mr. Hirsch's FOIL requests, with regard to the different documentation that I've provided with the green and blue highlights, with regard to the owner's manual and the due process that Mr. Hirsch claims that he has not been afforded, I would suggest that that possibly it would be helpful for Mr. Hirsch to take a second look at the letters in detail that he is receiving, because he's stating that nothing's available, but that is not what the letters say. So I'm sensing a common theme here, that there's a lot of jumping to conclusions, a lot of reacting. My thinking is that you want results. And I do, believe it or not, want your assessment to be fair. However, if there are going to be threats and insults and not following your afforded due process, I don't think that your results are going to be what you want. So we're here to help you, but in a sense, it's almost like you're your own worst enemy, because you're not helping yourself by all of what's happening here.
Right.
And it is a large drain on resources to address all these different matters, not only here in the township, but with regard to
Right.
some information I've seen with regard to the county, a huge.
Please stay up,
enormous amount.
Michelle, please stay up at the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So anyway, my point is, I think we need to help ourselves first before
Right.
we start pointing the finger, and maybe just
Right.
follow the instructions.
So, sure, a couple other just quick notes. Thank you. He still has additional due process. There is the Small Claims Assessment Review Court. He can have a SCAR hearing and go to a judge to appeal the decision of the Board of Assessment Review. So his due process is not done. The town board cannot act as a SCAR hearing board. Please stop interrupting. So, again, he still has due process left. The other thing I will note is there is a lot more to law than just the written law. It's called case law. When questions come up, as far as rules and interpretations, judges make rulings. In fact, in all the legal proceedings I've been involved in, that case law is far more important, believe it or not, than the written law, because typically the written law is minor, not minor, but in other words, it certainly doesn't cover every scenarios. So when the same scenario has come up in the past, they look at case law and quote cite. Now, of course, one of the wonderful things about case law is it is often contradictory. There are certain things, as you pointed out, some laws are more self-evident than others. And so the case law will be very consistent on it. And there's other things where the case law, you'll have different judges having come up with different rulings. And so the two attorneys on the two sides will quote different cases. And it's up to the presiding judge to then listen to that case law and decide which ones are more applicable to that particular case. But one of the things that's fairly consistent in case law with regards to real property tax law is that the burden of proof is on the homeowner and not on the assessor.
You could tell me where that is.
It's case law. Look it up.
So there is no regular law that says that. You're going off case law. That's an opinion.
Mr. Hirsch, I'm sorry, but your time to speak is at now.
You understand,
I'm being accused
you're-
of mischaracterized of saying things I never said.
Steve, do you want to, I'm sorry,
No,
Supervisor.
we're done. Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm not going to take the town board's time to explain how law works to you, to explain how to find case law. Anyway,
And just one other thing, the hearing,
you please do not, no, you're done.
look at the digital recording of the hearing. Okay, I was mischaracterized with that.
Okay,
Okay, I did in fact bring evidence. I did want to ask.
okay,
questions.
you're done.
I was making that clear.
That's fine. Okay. Are there any other public comments? Or
I
additional
have-
discussion items from the board?
Kevin online.
Go ahead, Mr. Yost. Are you still there?
Yes, Kevin Yost, 1474 Middle Road. 2 or 3 months ago, I presented to the board and in emails to Supervisor Schultz and Parks, Youth and Recreation Supervisor Grunman, ideas of different organizations that could set up in 4th of July for, diversity festival that it was the town board had sort of presented. It would be at the 4th of July. There have been a couple of small steps in the right direction a week and a half ago at the 4th of July festival. The 2 food trucks, one with the Greek food and one with the Jamaican food, and of course the plateau is rather, upper plateau is rather sparse. Maybe if we can get other food trucks or organizations in town with different food and different cultural events, that would be fine.
So Kevin, again, we like the idea. There was a multicultural event not too long ago. We've talked about it at for doing it at the 4th of July. Just be aware that a lot of that stuff is done well in advance. So some of the stuff will take time to build and get those ethnic foods present. Just as, we've been making a concerted effort to have a farmer's market, and the challenge has been getting farmers there. So it's not as easy as saying, make it so, so again, they are working on that. There is a diversity committee who is just been forming, and will also be helping in that regards. So we are making moves. Again, we like the idea. We had talked about, you weren't the only one to come up with the idea. There were a couple others, but you were pretty on point as far as what we're looking to do with that. But just understand that it's going to take some time.
Right, I understand. And then and also you mentioned a farmer's market, and I realized there used to be a farmer's market in the regional market that went by the wayside years ago, and then realized that our neighbor to the south, my honorary second town, Rush, is predominantly farmland, much more so than Henrietta, but their farmers market shrank out of existence. And then while we're on the subject of recreation, with the chalk eater, remember a few years ago that they couldn't use, the gymnasts couldn't use chalk at all because there was no ventilation system.
Thank you. Any other public discussion items, comments from the public? Hearing none, are there any committee or miscellaneous reports from the board?
I attended the School District Board of Education organizational meeting last night. And part of the meeting was that they reelected the current president to the board and Scott Adair as vice president. And then the rest of the meeting was pretty much businesslike, but it was interesting. They did have consultant there last night for the superintendent search.
Thank you. That's what I was
The
going to ask.
interim superintendent, I think, starts in a couple weeks. Andy is actually the acting interim superintendent until she comes on. I think she was a former superintendent at Spencerport, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe there was a new school board member as well that was,
Actually, there was, yes,
and one that was renewed.
Yep.
Um,
yeah, one who was renewed and one who was elected.
Yes,
And their speaker system's worse than ours.
yes. I would agree with that.
Other reports?
Library, believe it or not, it's exciting 3-year anniversary. So they're having a large party on large party. They're having a get together on July 20th from 10 to 3. And from 10:30 to 11, Elephant and Piggy story time, and the characters will be there as well. And so anybody who has small children has read Elephant and Piggy, and they're adorable. And then from 11:30 to 1, they're having frozen treats for you to purchase from JoJo's. And from 1 to 4:30, they're having board games from Millennium Games. So that is something to look forward to. And I don't know, is Tinker Park fall under rec, or should I?
Just what?
Were you going to say something
Yes,
about
talk about it.
Tinker
Go ahead.
Park? So Tinker Park, Saturday, July 16th, from 11 to 2 is having an ice cream social. And sorry, I can't see without my glasses to read and Pudge Birthday Bash.
It does.
So that's also a fun function coming up this weekend. So that's about all I have.
Any others? Town newsletter went out. I've already been receiving a ton of emails for the feedback on the garbage districts. So far, every single person who's responded is interested, but I will also say that that is one of those, it's not a poll. That just means that the people who are passionate about it are the people who want it. The biggest reason we've been seeing where people have said they want it, it's because the prices are inconsistent. So like when they get on, whether it's Facebook or Nextdoor, and discuss the prices, they find out that multiple people within the same neighborhood are getting charged different prices. Prices have been going through the roof. Quality of service has been going downhill. So again, the concept of the garbage district is not for us to get involved in the garbage business. Talking to any of the DPWs who do it, they all regret that they do it. What the idea is, we would create districts. It's not unlike what Greenlight does, where they create areas. When enough people sign up in the area, we would then go out to bid. The lowest response, we would send that back around. If enough people sign up to participate, they would then become the carrier for that neighborhood. It's not an opt-out scenario, it's an opt-in. So, but what we would do is in the bid, they would have to respond, here's what our price would be if I have 70% participation. Here's if I have 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. We can put 100, but I doubt we'll ever get 100. The idea being, if today it's rare that a waste hauler hits more than half of the homes on a street, right? So obviously, if I could get to 100%, I would cut my costs in half as a waste hauler, right? Because now for the same amount I'm collecting, the same distance, right? I've cut my costs down significantly. It also helps from a sustainability standpoint, because that's less fuel used, which again, also goes back to savings for them. It's also less noise, because now today you'll have 3 or more carriers going through a neighborhood. I won't say or more, it's 3, because that's all there are in town. Right, I'm just saying it's not or more, because there's 3 that service the town right now. So there's a lot of benefits from it, but again, we're not looking to force stuff down. It's going to be an opt-in standpoint. So there'll be some work ahead for us to actually create the districts and then figure out how we're going to have people sign up. And I might actually reach out to Greenlight to say, do you have the software that does it, that handles that sign up? We'll see if somebody already has it, because I hate to reinvent the wheel. But that was the big thing I wanted to include in this particular. So again, if you haven't seen it yet, it's been out today. It actually went to the mail yesterday. But it basically, it's covering a lot of the stuff that this town board and the two town boards prior to it have put in place over the past 4 years, and give an update on the successes. I talk about a few of the, I don't know if I can call them failures, although I do show a train wreck. I think that had more to do with the New York State DOT and DASNY with their inability to release the funds for the East River Road sidewalk, even though here we are 4.5 years later. Like I said, I guess I'll say a thank you ahead of time to everybody who's responding. It will provide good data, because one of the things we're going to have to do when we create that is go out to RFP with a standard. Here's the levels of services we want you to quote. Here are the standard discounts we want you to quote. So that way it's kind of standardized. And then the other advantage that gives us, or gives our residents, I should say, is if they're at risk of losing a huge block of customers, it gives us some ability to redress. And, because a lot of them get frustrated, some of the customer services, they're not local. They're either in another state or sometimes they're overseas. People don't feel they have good redress for that. So that would give us that ability to say, hey, do you really want to risk losing this district and losing all those customers in one fell swoop, as opposed to they're not as concerned if they lose a single customer. So like I said, I think it could be good. We'll see how it goes and go from there. That's it. Anything else? We've had some discussions, further discussions with the union today with regards to some adjustments that we talked about in executive session on Monday. I know it's short notice, but I'd like to go into a quick executive session just to give you those updates. And let you know what the union response was. I will say it was overwhelmingly positive. There are a couple things that we have to look at that I don't want to call them pitfalls, is not the right term, but things that they basically said there's some minor things we could do to help reduce the complaints, for lack of a better way to put it. So, so if we're all, unless someone has any other reports, then I will look to make a motion to go to executive session. Are there any other reports? And I will note that we will adjourn straight from executive session. So at that point, we can end the transmission. The interpreters can be done.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session at 9:20 PM.
I will second.
What's the topic of this?
Oh, it's the same as before for the one about personnel. Jenny, or Don?
Is it the appointment of?
No, it's not appointment of, it's pay. Yeah. It's the same one that was on Mondays.
I'm pulling up the wording right
Oh,
now.
actually, I've got it right here. Got it. Matters regarding the employment of particular people.
Okay.
The appointment of a particular person is no longer there. So it's matters regarding the employment of particular people. Okay.
Okay.
So I've seconded. Any objections?
Nope.
Hearing none, then meeting adjourned to executive session. Thank you all. Thank you, interpreters. Great job. Sorry.